going down, down in a merry-go-round. Sugar, we're going down, swinging. Number one in a bullet. Cock it and pull it down, down in a merry-go-round. Sugar, we're going down, swinging. Number one in a bullet.
I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. All right. Happy Thursday, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Sab's podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. My special guest, not my special guest. I'm so sorry. I got holiday weekend brain. This is the last stream before we go into the holiday weekend, guys. So just FYI, I won't be streaming on Sunday because I do have plans this weekend for the holiday. But anywho, shout out to everyone watching on YouTube, Rockfin, Twitter, and Rumble, and welcome back, guys. If you are new, I do want to let you know that Sab's podcast is a part of Revolutionary Blackout Network. You can catch me there on Thursdays for the Sabby and JB show, and you can catch me here on Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have quite a bit to talk about tonight. We do have breaking news around that big, beautiful bill and the drama that took place in the House. We're going to get into all of that. We're also going to discuss again how this is going to impact you, who it is going to impact, when these effects will take place. So quite a bit to get into, ladies and gentlemen. Let's go ahead and start off by giving out shout outs to people in the chat. And I do want to go ahead and say, of course, I hope everybody has a happy holiday weekend, but also we got to give out a happy birthday shout out to someone who's keeping things rocking and rolling in the background here. And that is Eric T. Red, my producer. It is his birthday. Give Eric a big happy birthday in the chat, ladies and gentlemen. Eric's being a little shy. He doesn't want to let you know, but it's his birthday. It is his birthday. Okay. What is up, peeps? What's going on, Darius says, OMG, I forgot about tonight. Thank you. Can't wait. Yeah, I figured I'd do one more before the holiday weekend. I know people are going to be busy this weekend having yummy barbecue food and all that jazz. Greetings, CBC voter says, happy Thursday, Sabby and Eric. Shout out to Blockbuster says, hi. Greetings, Brian. Bill passes House, $1.1 trillion in Medicaid cuts to go into effect in 2028. Tactic they often use in hopes that voters will forget it was their party's bill that caused the cuts. Yeah, that's a good point there, Brian. Shout out to James, says, great evening to everyone. Greetings, Ontario says, greetings. Shout out to Hannah, says, Diddy gonna walk? Will he? We'll get into that tonight. Shout out to Salma, says Zohran is one of the most beautiful Jewish, biblical, Hebrew, and Arabic Muslim name. In the Jewish Bible, Zohran means the shine that leads to many righteousness. Daniel 12:3, the Zor. Oh, snap. Salma knows what's up. Greetings, Amber. I would be fine with this bill if it wasn't only bad for the poors. They want their hospitals to be closed and their Medicaid to be taken. But this bill also screws over the middle class. Yeah, Amber, you see what's up. You see what's up. Greetings, Dana says, evening, everyone. Shout out to Mark, says, Sabby, Senator Andy Kim sucks. Greetings, Jimmy Zimzam says, hi, all. Shout out to Michael, says, free Diddy, free him. Will he go free? We'll talk about it. Shout out to the Retaliation King, says all life is matter. Greetings, Randy. Good evening, my hostess with the mostest and revolutionary comrades. Shout out to Red Dye, says Diddy, 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 D. Greetings, Angie, says hello, Sabby and chat. Shout out to Timestamp, says, oh, this full intro. Greetings, Sane Man, says hello, y'all, and I'm glad that you are sane. Shout out to Bill, says Diddy is a doobie don't. Greetings, Chris, says, evening, everyone. Evening, Sabby. Shout out to Linda, says, I really don't like this new intro. It's entirely too long. Oh, this is the live stream, Linda. Yeah, if you watch the clips, you don't see this intro. So just FYI. Yeah, most people for a live stream, they have like something that's at least 1 minute long to queue up, get ready for the stream. So just FYI. Eric T. Red just told me it's also Julian Assange's birthday today as well. So happy birthday to Julian Assange. Wow, 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 wow. Greetings Beyond Ebony says, peace. Ashura, Diddy walks in 5 years with good conduct. That could be the case. That very much could be the case. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have quite a bit to get into. Let's go ahead and let's give a shout out to everyone who is a Sabby patron. Thank you guys so much for your support. You are doing the damn thing. If you are interested in being a Sabby patron, I have 5 categories: Ultimate, Sabinators. Don't forget about those Sabsters. They're cool as well. We also have a group here called Sabbies. Yes, we do. They are lovely, lovely, lovely. Don't forget about the members as well. All of their names are listed here, ladies and gentlemen, and you can also see their names scrolling across the bottom of the screen throughout the live stream. Thank you so much. We want to give a shout out to a new Sabby patron. Over here, we call them newbies. Let's give it up for Odessa Flynn. Odessa in the house. All right. Thank you guys. Thank you so much. Again, we have quite a bit to get into. Let's go ahead and show you that beautiful thumbnail so you can see what we are talking about tonight. Like I said, crazy things happening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight's theme is challenge power, and we'll get into what I mean about that when we dive into all of these stories. Tonight's, ladies and gentlemen, as you can imagine, of course, we are going to discuss Sean Diddy Combs' verdict update. We are talking about that tonight, why they may have taken the measures that they took. I can tell you from just checking out the responses from people on social media and from people I know personally, the response here is very mixed, very mixed. And what does this mean for Diddy going forward? We're also going to discuss Zohran responds to Donald Trump, and we're going to get into a lot of the criticism that is coming at Zohran's way because of the policies that he supports. Not so much him as a character, right? But the policies that he's supporting. And I'm going to explain to you how we already support some of these policies just for certain people. We'll get into all of that. We're also going to discuss, if you have not heard by now, huge debate happened in the House, and that bill did pass, which means that that big, beautiful bill will be going across Donald Trump's desk. We're going to get into all of that and how that's going to impact you. We're also going to talk about a little bit of the theater here. You'll see in the thumbnail, in the yellow rectangle, there is Hakeem Jeffries and Thomas Massie. And what happened with the votes that Thomas Massie had on the Republican side that said they were going to vote against this bill. We'll get into all of that. We're also going to discuss, of course, our special guest is Daniel Mcadams. Daniel Mcadams is the executive director of the Ron Paul Institute, huge anti-war voice. We're going to get started with him. And last but not least, this story, I think, has kind of flown under the radar, but we need to talk about the young inventor in Georgia that is being threatened. He is being watched. And why are they watching him? We're going to get into all of that. I think a lot of people don't know about that story. So I'm excited to discuss that, ladies and gentlemen. Again, the theme tonight is challenge power. And how do we do that? And are people actually challenging power? Are people in Congress actually challenging power? And that's the question that I want you to ask yourself. When you're looking at a lot of the actions that are happening, like when we get into the story about the big, beautiful bill and the speech from Hakeem Jeffries and all these things that are happening, the speech from Maxine Waters, et cetera, at the end of the day, if you really want to know if politicians are fighting for you, you need to ask this question. Are they challenging power? So we'll get into all of that. But first and foremost, we're going to start with the interview with Daniel Mcadams. Again, he is the executive director of the Ron Paul Institute, a huge anti-war voice. Dan reached out to me. He wanted to come onto the show because he has a strategy to end these wars. And I think you guys need to hear this. One of the things we also discussed, we recorded this yesterday afternoon. One of the things that we also discussed is the breaking news story that was just released about the companies that are profiting off of the genocide in Gaza, and that includes tech. That includes tech. Let's go ahead and get into this interview here with Daniel. Welcome to Sab's podcast. I'm your host, Sabrinasalvati. My special guest is Daniel Mcadams. He's the executive director of the Ron Paul Institute. Welcome, Daniel. Thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, thanks for having me on, Sabrina. I'm really happy to be with you.
So I think, we have been talking about Gaza for quite some time, even before October 7th. The first year I started the show in October 2021, we were talking about one of the attacks back then. And I have to say, I'm somewhat hopeful that because of October 7th, that more people are starting to pay attention to the financial involvement with these wars. More people are calling out the lobbies. They're calling out AIPAC, right? They're calling out Kufi, all of these lobbies that support these efforts, these war efforts that are happening to protect the state of Israel. Currently, we are seeing that Donald Trump is trying to primary Thomas Massie. Thomas Massie does not take money from AIPAC and is very much anti-war. So we're seeing this on all fronts, and I think it's just more out in the open now. I want to talk a little bit about that, about the Israel lobbies and their influence in Congress and even some of these presidential elections. Is this the reason why we are having a lot of these wars in the Middle East? And is that the sole reason?
It's a large reason. And, certainly the power of the Israel lobby is strong. As you point out now, the last thing they want is to have light shined upon them, and that's what's happening now. And sadly, it's occurring on the literally in the blood of the Gazan people who are being slaughtered. But people are starting to recognize, hey, hang on a minute, why are we doing this? Why do my politicians, for example, as Marjorie Taylor Greene said, we've had 23 bills condemning anti-Semitism, but we can't seem to get the appropriations bills done. And Americans are starting to scratch their head. And there have been several polls this year, most recently a Pew poll just last month, showing that a majority, 52% of Americans, do not have a favorable view of Israel. A Gallup poll, or I think in late May, showed that a majority of even Republicans, if you look at Republicans from the ages of 17 to 35, majority of Republican voters do not have a favorable view of Israel. So there's a massive disconnect between a U.S. Congress in both houses, where probably 99% of them are absolutely in the tank for Israel, and an American public that's waking up and saying, I don't get this. Why are we doing this? We don't do this with any other country. What's going on here?
That's right. And how do we break away from that? Like, how do we get, is the solution to elect more politicians that are not going to take money from AIPAC? Or is the solution, does it have to be on a grander scale? Like, how do we get away from these lobby interest groups?
Well, I'll tell you one thing: it's going to get uglier before it gets better, and we see the iron fist inside the velvet glove of the Israel lobby, and we see it. You mentioned Thomas Massie, for example. Now, people would have you believe that Thomas Massie is a raving anti-Semite who wants Israel erased off the face of the earth, whereas the reality is his position is the same as was Dr. Paul's and many others, which is, I don't want to single Israel out for anything, but I don't support foreign aid at all. It's taking money from poor people in the U.S. and giving it to rich people overseas, and that's just not going to work. So the idea that Americans are supporting this is decreasing, but I think they're going to get more vicious. Now we see the attacks on speech in the United States. First, they're coming for foreign students because that's the low-hanging fruit. Oh, you wrote an editorial in your school newspaper 3 years ago saying that, gosh, maybe we shouldn't be supporting killing a lot of civilians. Well, you got to go home. Thankfully, this young woman was successful, as was the young man who was arrested. But that's just the opening. That's the opening round, and it's going to get worse and worse for Americans. So it's a big danger. They have a lot of power. You mentioned presidential elections. We know that that Ailson's widow gave what, 100 million, 200 million. It's just funny money at that point to President Donald Trump, and they want their return on their investment. And so that's why you're seeing things now that are clearly not in our interest being done to satisfy the interest of the big money people.
Did Ron Paul, did he face these same type of attacks that like Thomas Massie is facing right now?
Yes, he did. But I think it's worse now with Massie for the reasons that I'm saying, which is that more people are noticing that this is a problem. That why do you think they're banning? They want to ban TikTok. They want to sell it. They'll probably sell it to Miriam Adelson, right? They're trying to ban. Back when Dr. Paul was office, he was actually the first member of Congress that I remember, maybe the only member of Congress, who said in a live interview, this was many years ago, that Gaza is an open air concentration camp, and he was tarred for that. But I think it's more vicious now. I really do.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing it happen all around. The big question I think a lot of people have is, how do we stop these wars, in particular in the Middle East? Like, how do we stop it? I just saw a report earlier today that Donald Trump is not sending weapons to Ukraine. And I see people cheering as though this means he's trying to stop the war. But I would caution people, because he is sending more weapons to Israel. And I think that's why they stopped shipment to Ukraine, at least for now. But these wars, particular in the Middle East, I've heard about wars in the Middle East my whole life. And it wasn't until, I would say, a couple years ago, I started to realize Israel was a big driving factor, a big cause of a lot of the turmoil in the Middle East. And a lot of us that remember September 11, we were taught that it was the Arab countries that were evil, right? We were taught that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction, and that's why we're going to this war. Obviously, we learned later on that the war in Iraq was a big lie, and a lot of people lost their lives. And I think more people also woke up from after that. But in regards to the Middle East, it seems like as long as Israel, and some people disagree with me on this, but it just seems like Israel does not want to live peacefully with those other countries. It feels like, according to Netanyahu in this greater Israel plan, that is what they want to do. They want to expand the state of Israel. They want to take Gaza. They want to take the West Bank. According to that map, that includes parts of Saudi Arabia, Syria, Lebanon, and Jordan. And to me, it seems like the big problem is Israel. Is there any hope that when we talk about ending these wars, is there any hope that the United States at some point can cut away from Israel?
Well, there's a lot to unpack in that excellent question. Don't forget also part of Egypt. They want a big chunk of that as well.
Great.
The problem with Israel is, say you've got kind of a smart mouth on you and you like to go to bars and mouth off to people, but you also happen to have a massive friend who every time you get yourself in trouble with your mouth, he stands next to you and bops someone on the head who's attempting to get back at you. That's our toxic relationship with Israel. Israel feels that it can do whatever it wants because regardless of what it does, regardless of how many countries, I don't know if I can use the word piss off, however many countries they irritate, maybe I'll say that, sorry, the U.S. will always have its back. It's like a kid who you never punish. And that's the problem. So we're not doing them any favors by constantly backing them up. On the contrary, we're encouraging them to engage in these kind of self-destructive behaviors. You see the entire world now aligned against Israel. If you look at public opinion, that Pew poll I mentioned also surveyed the attitudes of people in about 24 countries. Every single country, with the strange exception of Nigeria, I can't figure that out, every single country, the majority or the vast majority, have negative views of Israel. So if you like Israel, you shouldn't like what's happening because it doesn't help them in the slightest. So I think the question that you started with is, how do we bring these wars for Israel to an end? And that's actually one of the reasons I bothered you on X. I don't usually do that, but one of the reasons I think that ways we can do that is to establish a broad, beyond left-right coalition. That's the founding principles of the Ron Paul Institute. A lot of people think that we're a libertarian organization. We're not. It was founded on the principles actually after the 2008 election, where Dr. Paul brought together the candidates of the minor parties, and it would be Chuck Baldwin, Cynthia McKinney, Bob Barr, and a few of the others, to agree on some basic things. Even though our ideologies are different, we agree that we shouldn't give money to rich countries overseas. We should audit the Fed. We should deal with the Federal Reserve, and a few other things. So that's the idea. We have to stop. This is exactly what the war party wants us to fight over things that we're not going to agree on. One of the things we have to do is put those aside for now and focus on the most important things, which is the war machine that's destroying our economy. And you point out, you're rightly skeptical and maybe even cynical about the cessation of missile shipments to Ukraine. Partly, yes, it is because Israel is almost out because they fired them off because they started a war that they knew they couldn't end. But the other thing is, we're running out of missiles. We don't have any. The THAAD missile cost $13 million each. For every Iranian missile that went toward Israel, they had to shoot at least two. And the Iranian missiles are $20,000, $50,000 each. We're burning up 32,000, whatever the math is, $23 million for every launch. And that money is not being paid by Israel. It's being paid by Sabrina and Daniel and everyone else around here. We're the ones that put the bill for it.
So See, this is a really good point. I remember about a couple years ago, there was a rally called the Rage Against the War Machine rally. I went to DC to cover that. And there was, some people were really like doubtful or hesitant about it. But when I was at that rally, there were people from different political ideologies at that point in time. And it did seem like the one thing everybody had in common was, okay, we got to end these wars. People may not remember this, but Tulsi Gabbard spoke at that rally. And that's why, and I see how she pivoted, once she got into Trump's administration. But I think that the anti-war movement in this country is getting bigger. I don't know if it's at the point to where it was during the Vietnam War, but I think it is growing and it is getting bigger. And I was a little, I guess, disappointed after October 7th when I saw that some of the same people like Tulsi Gabbard who spoke at that rally, all of a sudden it was because it was Israel, they were advocating for the U.S. give them everything that we can to help Israel. And I'm like, you just spoke at an anti-war rally like not too long ago. So what are you talking about? And that, I think, is what kind of woke me up. I'm like, okay, now that it's Israel, some people are going to make the excuse for we need to have this war because it's Israel, even some of the ones that were anti-war. And I think that was my big concern, because if you're speaking to some of the conservatives, some of the ones that did support Donald Trump, I am seeing more of them, especially podcasters, that are speaking out and saying, no, this isn't right. Like whether it's Candace Owens, Dave Smith, et cetera, or Dave Smith, actually libertarian, but you get my point. They're speaking out against it. My worry, though, is that it seems like the majority are not and are advocating for it because of biblical said prophecy, or because Donald Trump is supporting this or whatever. So I think that is my fear. I've been trying to wake people up that, like, I grew up in the church. The Israel that's mentioned in the Bible is not the modern day Israel of today. So I've been trying to educate people about that. But how do you get to the evangelical Christians, for example, that still say, well, this has to happen because it's biblical?
Yeah, it's a tiny minority. That's the positive part. By the way, I spoke at both of the Rage Against the War Machine rallies, and I can't. You probably were in the media tent. It was such a blast to be sitting there. It's me over there. You see Ron Paul, Chris Hayes, Tulsi Gabbard, Dennis Kucinich, who's on our board, by the way. All of these guys hanging out and comparing notes. It's really fascinating. I spoke at both of the Rage Against the War Machine rallies, and I can't. You probably were in the media tent. It was such a blast to be sitting there. It's me over there. You see Ron Paul, Chris Hayes, Tulsi Gabbard, Dennis Kucinich, who's on our board, by the way. All of these guys hanging out and comparing notes. It's really fascinating. The energy was incredible in that room, in the green room there. The question, one of the problems that we face, going back to the Iraq War, when I was working on Capitol Hill for Dr. Paul, we had assembled a great anti-war coalition. A lot of Democrats. We worked very closely with Barbara Lee, many others, and a lot of Republicans. And they would go down. They would put up resolutions. It was great. It was a great anti-war movement. As soon as Barack Obama was elected, all of the Democrats went dark. They didn't return our emails, didn't get back in touch because he's their guy. Likewise, with a lot of Trump people now who are with us, he's their guy. I just have to explain it to you. No, Trump is really anti-war. It's just that, and so we got to get over the sort of the no kings kind of thing. We got to get over this. We got to get rid of our idols here. None of these guys are saints. You may like some things about them, but don't be so clingy to your guy that you're going to miss the whole point of the operation. So that's a tricky thing to do.
I think that's well said there. I think a lot of people have like the hero worship, and they don't know how to let that go. Now, there was a news story that just broke that I think is really important. I want to go ahead and share this as well here. This story that just came out: lucrative business deals help sustain Israel's campaign in Gaza. This is according to the UN report. I just want to scroll down here for a second. This just goes to show people that a lot of money is involved here. It is Italian human rights lawyer Francesca Albanese, UN Special Rapporteur on the occupied Palestinian territory. She compiled the report based on more than 200 submissions from states, human rights defenders, companies, and academics. The report, published late on Monday, calls for companies to cease dealings with Israel and for legal accountability for executives implicated in the alleged violations of international law. And what it is saying here is that more than 60 companies, including major arms manufacturers and technology firms, in a report alleging their involvement in supporting Israeli settlements and military actions in Gaza. So Francesca is pointing out the companies here. And I think I want people to see this for technology giants. Alphabet, Amazon, Microsoft, and IBM were named as central to Israel's surveillance apparatus and the ongoing Gaza destruction. So, of course, also they mentioned Palantir Technologies, which we have covered on this show before. But I think this is a big deal because now people are starting to see that there are business deals that were attached to this as well. And I want to get your take on that.
Yeah, and you know what this really is, Sabrina? This is welfare for the wealthy, because Israel is not paying Palantir. Israel is not paying Amazon. It's our money. It's the Americans who are taxed and robbed to pay for it, to pay for Israel. This is U.S. aid to Israel that pays for this. This is the unholy alliance between the so-called private sector and the government, and they collude with each other to the benefit, so to speak, of Israel. But we are the real losers. I think a lot of people don't understand that Israel is a wealthy country. Israel GDP per capita is higher than Japan. This is a country that can take care of itself. If it would stop picking fights with people, then it would be in much better shape. But we're stealing from working people in America who are getting clobbered by inflation and a number of other things. We're stealing from these people to give to a rich country, Israel, so that it can start wars and then suck America into its wars, spend more money, and get Americans killed. It's a very sick and toxic situation. And I think when working in middle-class America wakes up to what's happening, what's being stolen from them to this benefit, that's when I think we'll start getting some kind of critical mass.
And I think that's the message that we really need to land with people is for people to understand all the money that's spent for war, all the money that's spent for the defense budget, which continues to increase over the years. This is money that could be spent right here at home. And so it's always really frustrating to me when I feel like people, and I think people just don't have time. Like people don't connect the dots there. When it seems like to me, whenever you ask for something domestically and it costs money, the question is, how are you going to pay for it? But we have wars all over the world and nobody asks, how are you going to pay for it? It just seems like it's just a given, just push money that way. And I want people to start asking that question, like, where are you getting all this money to pay for like these wars? Where are you getting all this money to put into the defense budget? Where is that coming from? So I think that people have to get, to your point, outside of their political ideologies in order to hear different perspectives. And that's another thing I wanted to ask you about. Both parties are pro-war. You know, the Democratic Party, I feel like a long time ago didn't used to be. But at this, both parties are pro-war. And I think like people really need an anti-war party. Now, people point towards the Green Party, but I know that's not for everybody. Like some people may agree with the anti-war issue, but maybe not the other issues, right? So I feel like if there ever was a time for people to move towards a third party or start supporting like independent candidates, I feel like now is that time. what do you feel? What do you feel is the likelihood of that happening? Of more people, let's say by the time we get around to 2028 election, more people choosing to vote third party or independent because of this reason alone.
Yeah, I think it could go that way. The problem is that it feels so daunting. You know, here we are, you and I mean, there are millions of people like us, but the people who really control the power, they have so much power and so much wealth. You know, there's a huge disconnect if you think about it. We have the largest military budget in the world. The next 7 countries below us combined spend less on military than we do. Yet we are stopping our shipments of missiles to Ukraine because we are running out of missiles. So if we're spending this trillion and a half dollars every year and we actually don't have any weapons, then what the heck? Where's the money going? Who's getting all this money? It's not defending us. It's not defending anyone. And that's the big scam. And, you know, people will knife you for $20. Imagine what they'll do to protect their fiefdoms, their billion-dollar kingdoms. So it's very, very dangerous, you know, to try to go up against them. But in terms of anti-war candidates, I think it's difficult. It's difficult to start a third party. You know, the Libertarian Party is around, but they've got their own problems. I remember back in 2000, the Reform Party with Pat Buchanan. He ran on a strictly anti-war position, and he attracted a lot of even progressive support. But it's very difficult. Americans don't really understand because we never face the consequences of the wars that we support. We're not living in Gaza. We're not running around. Even the poorest in America are not living like those people there. So we never see the effects of it. We don't see what's happened in Libya that was destroyed by the U.S. in the service of Israel, by the way. And the same is true with Syria, destroyed by the U.S. in the service of Israel. Now they're being headed by Al-Qaeda again. I mean, you know, it's unfortunate that we don't see this, that we don't connect the dots. I think elections are important, but I think what you do is more important because we have to educate people and make them start asking questions. When they start asking questions, they're going to seek answers.
What is the likelihood of? I feel like Benjamin Netanyahu is also continuing war so that he can stay in power. But if Benjamin Netanyahu were to resign, or let's say lose election, I feel like this saga still continues because I do worry when I hear politicians say this is all because of Benjamin Netanyahu, because I feel like if he is replaced, you're still going to have some of these same issues because Israel does want to expand and they don't want the Palestinian people there. But if Benjamin Netanyahu, let's say he were to resign this year or next year, or for whatever reason, they vote him out, which from what I understand from his last vote, it was very close. What do you think what happens there? What do you think people in Israel, what do they learn from this?
Yeah, I think, to be honest, there are quite a few progressives in the U.S. who like to do that. It's kind of convenient. They can say, well, it's just that right-wing Netanyahu. And it's okay that they're criticizing it, but I agree with you. They're missing the point. And if you look at internal polls in Israel, vast majority, I think I saw someone 82%. They believe that that Gaza should be ethnically cleansed. They believe that Palestinians should be completely kicked off the territory. So it's you're right. It's much deeper than simply one crazed politician. Unfortunately, Israeli society is brainwashed. They've been brainwashed from a very young age, and it's strange because it's kind of a suicidal brainwashing. You can't continue to stomp around killing people all around you and expect to have a future as a country. But as of right now, they are brainwashed, and I don't know how to fix that. I don't know how that can be fixed. You know, maybe it has to run its course. Who knows? But that is a real problem. It's not just Netanyahu. It's Israeli society. There's something that's very sick right now in Israeli society.
I totally hear you. What would you say to the opportunity of having another like anti-war event or anti-war rally for 2026 for next year, and maybe a blend of, I don't know, like Green Party speakers, like just a blend of, just anti-war speakers. What would you say to that? Do you think that would be a good? I think it needs to be something other than Rage Against the Machine. I think it needs to be Rage Against the War Machine. I think it needs to be something else. Just because, I think Again, some of the speakers totally changed their tune when Donald Trump became president. But would you be open to doing something like that again?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I would love to help organizing it. I mean, I think it's absolutely what's needed. When you see that I mean, that's one of the reasons, one of the main things the Ron Paul Institute does is hold conferences. And the people who come to our conferences are incredibly diverse politically in every way, shape, or form. It's important to bring people together because one of the biggest weapons they have against us is us feeling like, well, I'm all alone. I guess no one else thinks the way I do. Well, it turns out a lot of people think the way we do. And if we could put together something like this and especially promote it properly. My beef against those two rallies was that they weren't properly promoted, and so there wasn't enough people there. But if you do something like that, I mean, I was in the original Iraq War protests in 2002. We had 1 million people in DC saying don't go to war. And yeah, we didn't win, but we started a hell of a movement, and it can be done again, I think. But we have to keep in mind what you're saying. Broad coalition, as broad as possible. Don't fight over things that are not important. Just focus on this. I think it's a fantastic idea, and I'd love to be involved in it.
Awesome. Daniel, thank you so much for your time. Can you let everybody know where they can find your work?
Sure. We're at ronpaulinstitute.org. Dr. Paul and I do a daily Ron Paul Liberty Report. We often talk about foreign policy. That's Monday through Friday at noon Eastern time, live on Rumble for now. So we'd love to have people tune in. We do have a conference coming up at Dulles, Virginia on August 16th. We would love to have as many people as possible there to show the strength. We have some great speakers that are going to be there as well. So look forward to seeing all of your listeners and viewers as well, Sabrina.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right, ladies and gentlemen, again, that is Daniel Mcadams. He's the executive director of the Ron Paul Institute. I hope you appreciated that interview. We recorded that the other day because he wasn't available in the evening. But I think that was important to hear. I had heard of the Ron Paul Institute before, but I did not know that it didn't start out as a libertarian type thing, that they were actually building a coalition of people from different political ideologies that were anti-war. Didn't know about that. I didn't know that there were Democrats that had joined the Ron Paul Institute, again, to stop the wars. Just did not know. So I'm glad I had that conversation with him. And hopefully there will be, another anti-war event next year. Like I said, definitely follow him, follow his work, especially for those of you, I think everybody on here is, but for those of you that are anti-war, because they do really great work over there. And I think there's a lot that can be learned. I really, really do. So I appreciated having that interview. If you are just joining us, ladies and gentlemen, again, tonight's theme is challenge power. So that's what I want you to ask yourself at the end of these stories. Are people trying to challenge power? So I think that Daniel Mcadams, what they're doing at the Ron Paul Institute, I feel like they are trying to challenge power because they're trying to challenge the military industrial complex, right? So ask yourself that question when we get to the next story as well. Let's go ahead and get to some of the super chats here. Thank you, Sherelle. Hey, Sabby, thank you for your work. I just wanted to say there's a site people can go find out all their local AIPAC sellouts. It's called Track AIPAC. It has Democrats and Republicans for each state and the amount of money they got from AIPAC. Yes. And I've shown some of their work on here, but thank you for mentioning the website because they're on Twitter very often. But I forgot about the website. Thank you so much. And guys, definitely check that out. Track AIPAC. Thank you, Patch. Independence Day seems like a great day to free your mind. Happy birthday, Eric T. Thank you, Roger. AI surveillance is what makes it atrocious. Yeah, that's scary. Thank you, Carmen. Sup, Sab. At work as usual listening. Thank you for getting me through. You are welcome. Jimmy Tessiel says, Francesca Albanese make a great work on this issue. Yeah, she's pretty based. I've seen some of her work before online. Thank you, Daniel. Strike for our rights. Organize general strike now. Yes, you should follow Chris Smalls on Twitter. Activist Chris Smalls. That's what he's trying to do. I should have Chris Smalls back on again so he can talk more about that. The Oracle says the only way Israel and the Zios believe they can escape criticism is to shut down free speech. People are seeing too much. It's like Vietnam. Yeah, you're right. We've seen a lot. Kind of hard to forget what we saw. Like, people aren't going to forget those things. Brian says the war uniparty has to end. Great interview, Sabby and Daniel Mcadams. Thank you. Stephanie says it took time for an anti-Vietnam War movement to get started and grow. Yeah, actually. So I'm going to be having a conversation with someone. It's a special guest next week. So that's going to be a surprise. They've never been on here before. We're going to have that conversation about the Vietnam protests and the comparison to the Gaza protest and the politics around it all, and how people stood up to the war, to become anti-war. Thank you, Gamble. Theosophy and ideology die harder than human beings. Thank you, Mark. Sab, I did APAC track. Every New Jersey Congress is red. Yep. Thank you, Roger. He's right. We're running out of BIMs. Check Rockfin. All right, going to Rockfin. Let's get that comment on Rockfin. Hey. All right. And Eric, I'm putting the banner back up. There we go. Thank you, Roger, for the tip on Rockfin. Rare earth, along with a broader group of critical minerals, are used in weapons, cars, and other high-tech products. China has come to dominate the mining and production of those metals, and over the last 2 years has gradually started a restrict international sales. Yeah, I covered this. This is important for people to understand. Shortages of these critical minerals could potentially impact the production and readiness of essential military equipment. That's right. Hey, this is why, our way of getting there may be with China. You never know, because they possess the minerals to make those weapons. So that's important for people to know. If you haven't had a chance to do so, folks, please be sure to smash that like button. Thank you very much. If you're new, don't forget to like, sub, and share, just like a Care Bear. And we're moving on to the next story. Again, I want you to ask yourself, are they challenging power? This next story, we got to talk about this because some of the things that I have seen on corporate media and also online, it's just been outright ridiculous, right? So whether you support Zohran Mamdani or not, I think that's besides the point right now. I want to know why. In 2025, I'm seeing attacks against policy that Zohran has as if these ideas had never been proposed before. Like, people are pretending as though Bernie Sanders didn't run on, I would say, pretty much most of these policies. So it's really interesting to me how, once again, anytime, and I continue to say this, and I know everybody watching is not a socialist or a Marxist, I get it. But I've said this before, anytime you start to promote any type of policy that is going to benefit working class people in this country, corporate media comes in to smear you and said policy. Now, I find it very funny that all of a sudden, according to corporate media, Zohran Mamdani has gone from being a democratic socialist to a communist. And that's a big jump. And I want people to understand that's not the same thing. Okay? It's not the same thing. But people are doing that. The media always takes that extra step. And so now we see that Donald Trump is even threatening to deport Zohran Mamdani by denaturalizing him to get him out of here. This is how, and you guys got to pay attention. They are so scared. They are so afraid that someone who ran actually to the left of Bernie Sanders, because I don't remember Bernie supporting BDS. They're scared that someone who ran to the left of Bernie Sanders won that primary. Now, the fight isn't over for him. He still has to go through the general election. But the point is, he wasn't even supposed to get that far. So they're freaking out. So I want to show you what Trump said. I want to show you Zohran's response. And I want to show you what some of these other media pundits are saying and how they are exaggerating, saying that he's a communist when he is clearly not. And then we are going to break down how our government already implements some of these social policies that they are pushing back against, how they already implement that for certain people. And I know that from firsthand experience. So we're going to dive into this, ladies and gentlemen. So again, this is Donald Trump asking if he would deport Zohran Mamdani. Listen.
Your beloved New York City may well be led by a communist soon, Zohran Mamdani, who in his nomination speech said he will defy ICE and will not allow ICE to arrest criminal aliens in New York City. Your message to communist Zohran Mamdani?
Well, then we'll have to arrest him. Look, we don't need a communist in this country, but if we have one, I'm going to be watching over him very carefully on behalf of the nation. We send him money. We send him all the things that he needs to run a government. And by the way, they get about 3 times what you get, Ron. If you look at
your beloved New York.
So you see this? So now all of a sudden, he's gone from a democratic socialist to a communist. And no, it is not the same thing. So I am here to push back on the rhetoric that you're hearing from corporate media. It's so funny to me. Like, at one minute, they talked about democratic socialism was really scary and dangerous. Now they just skip past that. And now everybody is just a communist. It's insane. Absolutely insane. So do you see that? They're scared. Don't forget, Donald Trump is a billionaire. The billionaire class, they are scared. They're afraid because once again, people are starting to realize, wait a minute, there's more of us than them. And we're tired of having our rent increased all the time, but our pay isn't increasing. I told you the story recently about those jobs. I told you guys, they're not telling you the truth about the jobs. Just like I told you they weren't telling you the truth about the jobs under the Biden administration. It wasn't even revealed until right before the 2024 presidential election. CNN finally had revealed to everybody after they booted Biden out of there that that job report was a lie. Of course it was. Everyday working class people know. People who are actually looking for a job, they can tell you whether or not the market is doing well. There are a number of people that I know of this year and last year that have been laid off and still have not been able to find a job. That's who you need to talk to. You need to talk to the people who are actually looking for a job, not people who already got jobs. You know what I mean? Especially people who got jobs that they know are protected. So Zohran did respond to Donald Trump. I think you guys need to hear this.
Yesterday, Donald Trump said that I should be arrested. He said that I should be deported. He said that I should be denaturalized. And he said those things about me, someone who stands to be the first immigrant mayor of this city in generations, someone who would also be the first Muslim and the first South Asian mayor in this city's history. Less so because of who I am, because of where I come from, because of how I look or how I speak, and more so because he wants to distract from what I fight for. I fight for working people. I fight for the very people that have been priced out of this city, and I fight for the same people that he said he was fighting for. This is the same president who ran on a campaign of cheaper groceries, who ran on a campaign about easing a suffocating cost of living crisis. And ultimately, it is easier for him to fan the flames of division than to acknowledge the ways in which he has betrayed those working class Americans, not just in this city, but across this country, and the ways in which he continues to betray them. Because we know that he would rather speak about me than speak about the legislation that he is shepherding through Washington, D.C. Legislation that will quite literally take healthcare away from Americans, legislation that will steal food from the hungry, legislation that looks to build upon one of the largest transfers of wealth we've seen in recent history in his first administration and do it once again for the very Americans who already have enough. We should be fighting for those that do not have what they need to live a dignified life. That is what I will do, and I am thankful to have the protection and to have the support of so many New Yorkers who have stood up and said how unacceptable this is, including our governor, including members of the labor movement. And ultimately, what I fear for is that if this is what Donald Trump and his administration feel comfortable about saying about the Democratic nominee for the mayor of New York City, imagine what they feel comfortable saying and doing about immigrants whose names they don't even know.
So here's the thing. And as I've said before, it's one thing to run on those policies and then not implement them. The big, beautiful bill, as we've gone over before, that enriches those who are already rich. It takes from the poor and the middle class, what's left of it in this country, and it enriches those who are already rich. Billionaires get more tax breaks. Like, wealthy people are the ones that are going to benefit from those things. So like I told you guys before, Donald Trump did the same thing in 2024 that he did in 2016, run on a populist message, but not implement it. He knows that that rhetoric works. He knows that excites people, especially those that are like, well, we gave the Democrats a try. Now it's time to try something different. You know, that's how he won in 2016. He knows it works, but he doesn't actually plan on doing it. And as I said before, look, I still say every politician, you shouldn't trust any politician, period. You got to hold them with skepticism. I said the same thing about Zohran, but I will also say this. Some of these attacks that are coming his way have been absolutely ridiculous. There are politicians, like, including in his own party, like Kirsten Gillibrand, who went on this racist tirade against him. Now, she finally apologized, but I honestly think Kirsten Gillibrand needs to resign. I don't think that's someone who should be in the Senate. I think she should resign. So I can say that. I think that John Fetterman needs to resign. I think a lot of these people need to go. Been very clear about that. But everybody is starting to show their hand. And you saw some of this when Bernie was running for president. But now I feel like they've become even more blatant, including this clown here, Chris Cuomo. Okay? Chris Cuomo, who is actually mad because his brother lost. He's mad because the Cuomo legacy didn't continue past that primary. Now, Andrew Cuomo is supposedly trying to run in the general election as, I guess, there's no party affiliation, right? Because he just can't get over his whole damn ego. He's still trying to run even though he lost, and he didn't lose by a little. So this guy right here, he calls it extremism. Listen to this.
The majority is not afraid of migrants, as Trump may like, but they are afraid of these guys, Iranian nationals with jihadist sympathies. You let them in with a laxity that AOC and other radicals insisted on. And the far left is actively embracing people who are the enemy. Pro-Hamas, people who chant globalize the Intifada, the Palestinian uprising characterized by over 130 suicide bombings. Really? And I'm not picking on AOC. I respect her success in developing a following. I just think that she's killing her party. She is a deranged form of Democrat.
Now, see, this comes about after, like I said, his brother lost the primary. And Chris Cuomo wants you to believe that AOC has more power than she does when she's not a part of Democrat leadership. That's Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer. He wants you to believe that the Democratic Party has actually gone the way of the progressives and the Democratic Socialists. Hell, if that was the case, Jamal Bowman and Cori Bush would still be there. If that was the case, AOC would have won that oversight committee chair seat. That's not the case. Remember, they didn't even want to force the vote for Medicare for All against Nancy Pelosi's vote for Speaker. They didn't even want to do that. They have gone along with Democrat leadership. So be very careful here, right? Even people like Chris Cuomo, he's with News Nation now. You know, when he got fired from CNN, number one, even when he was at CNN, don't forget, he tried to cheat for his brother. He tried to cheat for his brother. As a journalist, as a so-called journalist, he tried to cheat for his brother, his corrupt brother. And he also apparently, according to the women that he worked with, couldn't keep his damn hands to himself, just like his brother. But somehow he just magically shows up out of nowhere and gets a job just like that with News Nation. And News Nation, I guess they pretend to be somewhat independent. They're not independent. They're owned by the same company that owns The Hill Rising. They're corporate media as well. But he goes on to News Nation and he says, I'm giving an independent take. Your take is still very much establishment and status quo. Be very careful about these networks that pretend to look like they're independent, but are actually corporate and they still support the establishment.
And I'm pointing her out because she's at the top of the food chain. A recent CNN poll found she's the top Democratic leader who best reflects the core values of the Democratic Party. And this is by Democratic voters. She ranked higher than Harris, Jeffries, Newsom, even Obama. Are you kidding me?
But if you look at the percentages, it's not as high as he's trying to make it seem. She got 10%. He's over here talking like she got 50 or 60%. When you look at these percentages, none of these people are doing well. I'm sorry, but this actually isn't good for any of them. Any of them. And instead of addressing the needs of working class people, Chris Cuomo is taking this opportunity to smear people that support policies that would help working class people. I don't ever see Chris Cuomo take his microphone and smear the establishment or smear the status quo or the military industrial complex. He smears things that will benefit working people because he's not one of them. He's not one of you. Chris Cuomo is worth millions of dollars. He comes from a political family. His father, Mario Cuomo, was also a politician. His brother, Andrew Cuomo, corrupt as hell, was governor of New York, and he killed all those people in the nursing home. And now here he is again on another platform, still running cover for his brother. He's corrupt.
She couldn't be less about what made the Democratic Party great. And I get to say that. She is not a real one. I was raised by a real one. Google Mario Cuomo. Google Teddy Kennedy. Google Daniel Patrick Moynihan. Google any of the legends. You know the names. Remember the ideas. Mario Cuomo was a child of immigrants. He was considered less than himself. He would have never allowed a porous border or fake fights and socialistic calls for free everything, especially when there was a real bill to battle for Medicaid and tax breaks for the working class.
Your father was a politician during a time when we didn't have the economic situation that we have today in this country. You know, they kill me with the whole back in my day thing. You know, back in my day, because wages did not, for my generation, wages did not adjust for inflation. He doesn't want to mention that part. He leaves that out. He doesn't want to mention how much it cost to buy a house back then during his father's day compared to today. He doesn't want to talk about that. So stop trying to pretend like things are the same today as they were back then, as if the economy was the same. It's not. But Chris Cuomo is rich, so he don't give a damn. Don't give a damn. Don't tell me this guy interacts with working class people. Don't tell me this guy. I don't never see no videos of Chris Cuomo out on the street talking to regular everyday people. The last time I saw a video of him doing that was when someone called him Fredo and he's threatened to throw them down the stairs. That's it. He stays in a bubble, an elite bubble, and he doesn't know what everyday people are going with. He's hanging out with people like, same thing with Stephen A. Smith. He's hanging out with people like Stephen A. Smith, Bill O'Reilly. You think Chris Cuomo knows what it's like to work 2 jobs just to pay the bills? Yes. So thank you for mentioning your father, because you just confirm how you grew up in a sense that you are a part of a political family. You didn't get that job at CNN just because you worked hard. Let's keep it real. Let's continue.
AOC is popular because extremism drives social media and magnifies minorities. Pissing people off pays off. But radicals keep missing the rational majority. AOC and the radical left are the party of 20% when the country is the other 80%.
So he brings up the majority. What he is trying to tell you is that if you're not a part of the majority, then you're radical, right? Okay, whatever. Call it whatever you want to call it. But here's the problem, For Chris Cuomo to believe that you should just go along with the majority, let's talk about a time when that would not have been the best idea. As much as people like Chris Cuomo and some others that are establishment like to praise the civil rights movement, during that time, during the civil rights movement, when all those activists were out marching in the streets and they were getting hosed and they had dogs sicked on them, did you know that the civil rights movement was not popular among the American people at that time? The majority did not agree with the civil rights movement. And also, that includes some Black people as well. That's right. That's a common misconception. Not all Black people agree with the civil rights movement either. So to Chris Cuomo's point, if you're supposed to always go along with the majority, what about when the majority is wrong? The majority was against the civil rights movement. So according to Chris Cuomo, the people who supported the civil rights movement and those activists, they should have just went along with the majority. That's the problem with that argument. The majority isn't always right. Sometimes the majority is wrong. And I would say this. People in this country, and I never thought this day and age, when I was growing up, I never thought that I would see people who graduated from college working multiple jobs just to pay the bills. I never thought I would graduate from college and have to have 2 jobs. I never thought that I would see college graduates working at Starbucks because that's the job that they could get in a short amount of time and they had bills to pay. I never thought that people wouldn't be able to buy a home. But that's where we're at. That's the problem with that argument that Chris Cuomo has. So he's pissed because his brother did not win the primary. And we get into this little panel here on CNN where they also go off about democratic socialism. Listen to this.
Breaking news tonight in the race.
Let's go forward a little bit more. Here we go.
Are paycheck to paycheck, not waiting for that check. We're paycheck to paycheck. We are struggling in New York City. I was born in Long Island Jewish Hospital. I'm a Bronx kid from 236 and Byron Avenue. This is my home. But living in a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom on 50th and 10th in Hell's Kitchen was $3,400 during the pandemic when New York City was trying to get everybody back. Look, go to Zillow right now and look at that apartment. That's $5,500 a month.
That's right.
Now, in the districts, Cuomo's smart to stay in the race as an independent because of a lot of the policies that he's talking about, when you start to drill into them, a lot of them don't make too much sense in terms of how you execute them. But he's still speaking to the larger of the affordability crisis. He's from New York. He has lived the challenges that everyday New Yorkers like me go through. He's throwing the ideas out there and it's resonating with people that are, let's be honest, look like us and are, in lower incomes. And they're like, we need some type of change in City Hall.
There's some truth to what he's saying. Okay, this is sort of like, when Democrats in the election against Trump kept talking in terms that Americans were like, what does this even mean? Like, people don't care what you call it. They want to know what you're doing for them. And he is speaking to that, whether you like the word socialism or not.
Well, Abby, I watched him today, and I actually watched Mayor Adams as well. And to watch Mayor Adams, I can see where the campaign's going. He made it very clear. It's about safety. It's about blue collar versus a young man with dreams. And that's what
and we'll play it when you're done.
He laid that out. But let me tell you something. Watching Mamdani today, don't underestimate this guy. And I think having Cuomo get in the race helps Mamdani, to be very sincere with you. Because at the end of the day, Mamdani, he's authentic. He's a believer. Yeah. They asked him on capitalism.
He was straight up.
That's right.
So be careful with that. That's why I always said Bernie Sanders would have been stronger in an election because he's a believer.
But the only
and
issue,
authenticity goes a long way in American politics today.
The only issue, and I was talking to somebody just before this that works in investment banking, and he was like, Wall Street's probably not going to vote for this guy. Like, let's be honest. Because when you start to drill into certain things, like the grocery store plan, right? Like, how is that going to impact capitalism and small groceries? Like, if I own a bodega and the amount of rent that I'm paying to have that bodega, and I do price markups based on what I'm buying and what I sell in the store, that's capitalism. Like, yes, it's wrong to do that and mark it up 20x.
But you might not have to if you're just as those apartments were going up. I used to live in New York. I used to live in Bed-Stuy. I used to teach at Boys and Girls High School. I can't come back to this city right now because it is too expensive. I want to live in this city, but I am priced out of it.
No, you don't.
Yes, I do. I love New York. I want to live in the city. I really do. But it is so expensive. When I was here and living as a teacher, I went into debt because you can't. I was playing by the rules. I was living the American dream and I went into debt. And so he is giving people, and I will say, I am not a socialist. I believe that everyone should have a pathway to wealth. But we have to agree with what he was saying, is that the distribution of wealth in this country is drastic. And you know what? People on Wall Street might not vote for him, but you know, the most people on Wall Street don't make the money that the CEOs of these firms make.
So we got to stop right there. First and foremost, why are we worried about people on Wall Street voting for said politician? You see, that's a big part of the problem. People on Wall Street are rich. These people are loaded. You'd be surprised how much some of these people make. Why does that matter? Why are you concerned about what Wall Street is going to do? The same Wall Street that got a pass during the 2008 housing crisis while people lost their homes? That Wall Street? They say socialism as though it's such a dirty word. And I just got to check something here for you guys and make this very clear. I grew up in a military family. When I lived overseas, we went to DOD's schools. That's what the schools are called there. Some people call it international school, whatever, but it's the DOD schools. These are the schools that are for service members' kids, right? So we go to those schools. Let me explain something to you. When I played basketball, when I played softball, when I was a cheerleader, we ain't got to go through everything, but I did a lot of stuff. When I was in the band, I didn't pay a dime. You know why I didn't pay anything? Because the U.S. government pays for it. A lot of people don't know this. And so I'm telling you this, and make sure you pass this on to your friends and your fam. I didn't pay for my uniforms to play sports. I didn't even pay for my clarinet. The U.S. government pays for it. All of those DOD schools overseas that the kids go to, the U.S. government pays for it. And those were nice schools. Went to Hanau Middle School in Hanau, Germany. Went to Gelhausen Elementary School. The schools were nice. The class sizes are smaller. So the student to teacher ratio was smaller, which means it's better for the student and it's better for the teacher. When we went on field trips, didn't have to pay for it. Everybody get where I'm going here? The point that I have is this. If the federal government can pay for the DOD schools, why can't the federal government pay for the public schools in the United States that are not a part of the DOD school? Why are kids in these public schools having to pay for everything nickel and dime? By the way, I also didn't have to pay for school supplies. When we came back to the States, all of a sudden, everything cost. The moment I was out of DOD schools and I went to regular K through 12 in the US, we had to pay for every single thing. I had to pay to be on the debate team. I remember going to a lawyer's office and asking him if he could sponsor me because I could, like, we ain't have $100 and $300 and $400 here for all these tournaments. He sponsored me, wrote me a big ass check. I took it back to my debate coach. She deposited it, and that's how I was able to go to those debate tournaments. See, people don't know a lot of these things. People don't know some of the things that I did so that I could try to get away. Because like I said, overseas in the Dodd schools, these things didn't cost money. We already implement those things. Let me explain something else. Another thing that we do, okay? See, they don't want you to know this. Talk to people who were military kids, and those of us that went overseas will tell you. The U.S. government don't want you to know that. Point is, they already doing this, guys. So the same way they get up there and point their finger at Zohran and call him a communist and a socialist and these policies are radical and crazy, the government has already been doing it. They just ain't been doing it for you. And the thing is, you shouldn't have to be a part of the military industrial complex to get those opportunities. And we had everything at Dodd schools. You wanted to learn multiple languages? No problem. Some of our teachers were American. Some of our teachers were European. We had German teachers. We had teachers from Japan. We had teachers from all over the world because they were paid more if they taught in the Dodd schools. See, a lot of people don't know this. If you wanted to do it, you could do it. They had everything. Let me tell you another thing. These radical policies that they talk about, universal health care, free public college. You know who else has these programs? You know, Bernie talks about the European countries that have them, but you know who else has these programs? Israel. So if the US government feels that these policies are so radical or extreme, then how come they never call it out when their allies also have these policies? I don't hear any of these politicians complaining about Israel having universal health care. And why are they sending them $3.8 billion a year when everybody there got health care? You see what I'm saying? So throw this back in their face when they complain to you when you say we should all have health care. I don't hear any of these politicians telling Netanyahu or any of the Likud party members that you guys are too radical to have free college for everyone in Israel. No, it's only when it's about us. Most of the NATO countries have these policies. They've been playing you over and over and over. Let me tell you something else. Those who are also in the military, they have a healthcare insurance called TRICARE. TRICARE pays for almost every damn thing. If you have to I remember getting prescriptions when we were under TRICARE. Especially if you got it on base, if you got your prescription on base, I remember paying like $2, $3, maybe. TRICARE is actually even better than Medicare for all. They don't talk about that. More people that have been in the military and those of us that have been Army kids, we need to talk about this more, about all the things they give you. Let me tell you something else, since they want to bring up freebies. Okay? Did you know that if you are a soldier, active duty, did you know that they can go to a car dealership and get a car, put $0 down with no credit? Can you do that? Did you know that they get, you want to talk about home ownership? Did you know that they get a VA loan where they have to put $0 down? But you sitting at home trying to come up with 20% for a down payment, or 3.5% if you do the first time home buyer program. The government been doing this. They just ain't been doing it for you. There are a number of things that soldiers, military members, and their family members get for free from the government. And all those politicians that stand up there and say, that's radical, that's socialism, that's crazy, that's wild, they're the same ones that say, support our troops, God bless America. They've been giving those things to military families for decades. Another one. They don't want to give out freebies. We don't do that. No freebies. Work for what you want. Military paying off student loans. This is how some of my friends ended up joining the military after undergrad, because the military will pay off your student loans by a certain amount now, but they'll pay it off for you. You serve for them a couple of years, they'll pay off your student loans. How many of you know that? You get the best health care, you get the best dental, great Dodd schools. They've been doing it. That's how you know that it's fake. That's how you know this is all a fraud. You don't get to go say, okay, I want to go buy a house. They're not telling you you don't have to put any money down. But they doing it for the military. So that's how you push back on that talking point, ladies and gentlemen. That's how you push back on it. And again, a lot of people just don't know.
Socialists voting for him.
That's
in the
right.
Primary. It was a lot larger than that. People that are feeling your pain, and people, his message resonates, which I think sends a message to the Democratic Party that cost is still the number one issue. And whether you're running as a socialist or whatever, that is the issue.
Let me give you a taste of what's been going on with New York's wealthy folks. Here's Ryan Serhant, who's a luxury real estate broker. You might remember him from $1 Million Listing. He says, my number one job will be moving people from New York to Florida again. Based on the results, clients are going to hold off on making any kind of investments in New York City. You have others like billionaire hedge fund manager and MAGA folk, Bill Ackman, saying socialism has no place in the economic capital. The ability of New York City to offer services to the poor and needy, let alone the average New Yorker, is entirely dependent on New York.
So listen to this. This is coming from Bill Ackman, billionaire, right? So once again, I just want to remind you, the government already does it for active military and their family members. Also, thank you so much for reminding me of this one, Janine. Also, the military gets a rent stipend to live off base depending on where they are deployed. Yes, ma'am. That's another thing. Did you guys know that? Did you know they get it? Everybody don't live in the barracks. Did you know they get a stipend to pay for their rent? Do you get a stipend to pay for your rent? But according to these politicians and these corporate media pundits, we have no place for this in this country. They've been doing it. They just been lying to you. We'll let her finish with this one here.
New York City being a business-friendly environment and a place where wealthy residents are willing to spend 183 days and assume the associated tax burden. There is truth to what he's saying about the tax base of the city, but I'm wondering the complaints from the people who are making millions and millions and millions of dollars. How does that fall on the ears of people making $50,000 and $60,000 and $70,000?
Look, everyone's welcome to Miami and Florida. We welcome all New York expats who wants to be there. I'll be your relocation specialist. We've had so many people. Yeah, we've had so many people, so many New Yorkers like myself move to Florida during the COVID years, and we're going to have a second wave, and we've got plenty of land and real estate down there. You're going to see an exodus if Zohran gets in, and we're already being promised that, not just because of high cost of living, but because of the Jewish base here. They're scared, and I'm hearing from various people here in New York, and they're concerned about their safety living here with a.
So guys, this is all a game. This is all theater. I want you to ask yourself this question again about challenging power, right? You see, Andrew Cuomo doesn't want to challenge power. Yeah, they'll all talk, rhetoric against Donald Trump, but you got power in the Democratic Party too. He doesn't want to challenge it. Ask yourself this question. Are they trying to challenge corporations? Corporate interests? Billionaires? No. That's how you know they not trying to do anything for you. That's how you know when you ask these questions to people and you're like, well, let's just see what they do. We don't know how they're going to be. No, you do know how they are going to be. This is the big one. If you don't see them challenging power, they are not going to be for you. They're not going to be for the working class. Now, the problem that Zohran runs into is that he's in the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party also is not challenging power. And this is why I bring this up. You guys have got to understand they've been having socialism in the military. They've had it for years. And a part of socialism is workers owning the means of production. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's actually kind of crazy if you sit back and you think about it. Why am I working for said company and I did all this work for them all these years, but I don't even own it? Did you know when I worked at MIT, you had to sign a licensing agreement that basically said that anything that you created while you were working there belongs to MIT. It is their property. The fuck? You don't own it. And as much as people continue to push unions, I think unions are the first step, but it's not the final step. The reason why it's not the final step is because, once again, you do not have ownership. These union managers have been known to turn against the rank and file members multiple times. We had the railroad workers on this show. We had them on the show. The union management turned against them. This is not uncommon. That's why the next step needs to be worker cooperatives, where you have ownership. So instead of you working for Uber or Lyft, you would have a ride service that you and your homies created, and all of you would own a piece of that company. So even if you left one day, you still get a profit. And anyone who's knows socialism and studies socialism, worker cooperatives should be the end game, not unionization. So people are angry because they're tired of high rents. They're tired of low pay. And all this money goes out the door to Israel and everybody damn else and the billionaires, but not to the people who are the workers and are working class. And that didn't start under Donald Trump. That has been a problem for years. Occupy. Don't forget that happened under Barack Obama. We've been dealing with this issue. Now, the problem again that I think that Zohran's going to run into is challenging Democrat leadership. It's not going to be necessarily Donald Trump. That's a given. That's a given. But it's the Democrat leadership. It's people like Hakeem Jeffries who will not endorse him and says, I don't really know who he is. Our districts don't overlap, but he just won Hakeem's district. That's the thing. Because if you can't challenge power, you don't need to be there. And we've seen this happen with AOC. We've seen it happen with Bernie. We've seen it happen with, when it came time for them to really challenge power, they wouldn't do it. They wouldn't do it. We watched them capitulate. So that's how you know. But you guys need to know the truth. You need to know the truth about the socialist policies that already exist. They just don't want you to know about it. We got to wake up, folks. We got to wake up. Let's go to some of the comments here. JY says billionaires are freaking out. They gonna be taxed, right? Thank you, Kawani. Kawani says California needs to do what New York did, vote Butch Ware, not Kamala. There you go. Jinzu said boomers paid $10K for a house. Now it's $400K. C. Sparrow said, yeah, but military salary is $30K a year. It depends on your rank. And if you're not paying for housing, that's what I'm saying. Michael said, Sab, trying to get a hold of you. Your email doesn't work. Are you sure you have the right email? I've been receiving emails all day. I don't know. I'll put it here so you can see it, because no one has told me this before. I haven't had that issue. So let me just put this here so you can see it. And it should be fine. sabrinasalvati at sabbysabs.com. Make sure you try that one. Yeah, I don't know if you were trying. Okay. All right. Let's go ahead and get the comment on Rockfin, and we'll go into the next story. All right. Thank you, Roger. When I see Zorro, I see Obama, smiling all the time, polished and young. I'm going to say, people, don't let yourself be pulled into defending him against racist, baseless attacks and on communism and socialism. That was our mistake with Obama, spending so much time defending against baseless, racist attacks that we weren't holding him accountable. Let him take those arrows himself. We got our own arrows. Thank you for that. And thank you for this one. Here's the thing. With things the way they are in New York State right now, people, we have been number one in income inequality for the past decade straight. Richie Torres, CD South Bronx, poorest in the country. How is it that they share the same city as the financial district, Lower Manhattan? New York City has the most billionaires in the world, 123 of them. They're not doing anything for us now. So will we really miss them? No, let them leave. Let them leave. Let them leave. Okay. All right, honey buns. We are moving on to the next story here, ladies and gentlemen. If you have not heard by now, it appears that the big, beautiful bill has passed in the House. And there was some hope there that Thomas Massie was going to be able to rally some of his Republican comrades to vote against that bill. But in the final hours, unfortunately, all of them caved except for one, and that is Fitzpatrick, that did not cave. So Thomas Massie and Fitzpatrick decided to vote against it. So first of all, kudos to Thomas Massie and Fitzpatrick for doing that. But something needs to be said. It turns out the reason why they decided to cave, or one of the reasons why, is because they really wanted to stick it to the Dems. I'm going to say this again. One of the reasons why those votes that Thomas Massie had decided to cave is because they really wanted to stick it to the Dems. They're willing to sell out your health, your life, just to say, ha ha, at the Democratic Party. That's how unserious these people are. Congress is like high school. This is absolutely ridiculous. They're willing to sell out their own constituents, and I say theirs for a reason, in order to stick it to the Democratic Party. What the hell is our government doing? Some of the things that this bill will do. Check this out.
My advice for Democrats is less hyperbole and more specifics on what people actually care about. Let me give you an example. Scott, you care a lot about the national park system. He's proposing a $1.2 billion cut to national park system. That's the most in the 109-year history of national parks. More specifically, 20 people are being laid off on the Mammoth Cave National Park in Kentucky. 30% of Kentuckians are on Medicaid. 200,000 are going to be losing their Medicaid. 35 hospitals in Kentucky receive disproportionate Medicaid funding, and so they're going to be at risk. And 10% increase in utility bills Kentuckians are going to see. I think when you hear that, I think you're going to care a lot more than just hearing hyperbolic statements from Democrats. My advice for Democrats.
So that's a really good point that he brought up there. And it's what I've been trying to explain earlier on about this bill. The people that are going to be hit the most from this are voters in red states, not the voters in the blue states, because a lot of these policies, they're pushing it back to the states, right? So they're saying like, sorry, but if you make a certain amount of, if your state makes a certain amount of revenue or whatever, or uses this much amount of Medicaid, I went over the numbers before, then you're going to have to take care of that. The federal government isn't going to help you with this anymore. Okay, so the poorest states in this country are red states. It's not the blue states. What he said there about people that live in Kentucky, 100% true. People in Kentucky are going to suffer. So when I said Republican politicians voted against their own constituents, that's exactly what I'm talking about. When I talk about them cutting Medicaid, that is going to impact, again, predominantly red states. Rural hospitals is also going to take a hit. Is that going to be an issue in a place like where I live in Boston? No, that's going to be a problem in the red states. So that's who's going to be impacted the most by this bill. And I think, you know, I don't know what to tell you about your representatives, but I can say this much. This is why I say you cannot trust a politician. At the end of the day, most of these people in Congress are going to do what works out best for their political career, even if that means turning their back on you and getting rid of your health insurance. Now, when it comes to the Medicaid, this is supposed to take effect in 2028. How convenient, right? How convenient. Notice it doesn't happen right away, a couple years down the road. So by that time, some people may forget that they even did this. At the same time, it almost makes you wonder if they're trying to help the Democratic Party. See, this is what I mean about these parties helping each other stay in power. Because for people who will remember this come 2028, they're probably going to be like, well, I'm going to vote for the Democrats. And then we just go back and forth and the pendulum just swings back and forth. And you know what? At the end of the day, it's not challenge to power. And people, when they go out and vote, they think that, well, I'm going to vote for this party this time. I'm going to vote for that one this time. And they did this, so I'm going back over to this one and da-da-da. And at the end of the day, you're still not challenging power. And that's what I mean. Both parties keep the power in place. Neither party is challenging power. They'll challenge each other, but they're not going to challenge Big Pharma. They're not going to challenge Wall Street. They're definitely not going to challenge the military-industrial complex. They keep it in place. And I want you to think about that when we see this clip from Hakeem Jeffries, because Hakeem Jeffries got on the floor trying to do this filibuster here. I think he spoke for about 8 hours, right? To push back against this. It's performative. It's theater. He already knew that the bill was going to pass. I'm telling everybody this over and over. He already knew the bill was going to pass. Is Hakeem Jeffries challenging power by challenging Donald Trump? No, because ultimately, when Donald Trump is no longer president and someone else gets into that seat, they're still going to keep Big Pharma, the MIC, and Wall Street in power. Listen to this.
Our House Republican colleagues, Mr. Speaker, have one last opportunity to join us as Democrats. Every single Democrat who's going to stand up and protect the health care of the American people. Stand up and protect the nutritional assistance of the American people. Stand up and protect our farmers. Stand up and protect our veterans. Stand up and protect the clean energy economy. Stand up to protect our public schools. Every single one of my House Republican colleagues have the opportunity now in this chamber, not the other chamber, in this chamber, to join us as Democrats and stand up for what is right.
Now, let me ask you a question. Peep the game. Did you see Hakeem Jeffries do this when Joe Biden kicked people off of Medicaid? Did you see him do this when Joe Biden kicked people off of SNAP? See, a lot of people didn't like to talk about that during that time because they were like, oh, don't say anything because it's the Democratic Party. But some of us in independent media were calling that out at that point in time. When Biden kicked people off, don't forget, after the pandemic, they made the announcement. Biden decided, okay, well, we're going to kick this many people off of Medicaid and this many people off of SNAP. Now, it's not as crazy as what's in this bill, but he still did it. Where was that same speech from Hakeem Jeffries then? Why wasn't he trying to protect people to keep their health insurance then? because it was his party. This is the theater. When you know that something is already going to pass, they already got the votes, and then you say, well, I'm going to do this anyway, yada, yada, yada. If Hakeem Jeffries cared so much about people losing what they have, he would not have the donors that benefit from that happening. Hakeem Jeffries doesn't even support universal health care. I wonder why. And I would argue if we had universal health care, we may not have been in this situation today. Hakeem, number one priority is Israel. Takes a lot of money from AIPAC. One thing I guess I can say about Thomas Massie is that he doesn't take money from AIPAC. But Hakeem Jeffries is very corporate, and he has the donors that he have are some of the same donors that his Republican colleagues have in Congress as well. They all there to keep the status quo. And that's why they don't want you to get any Green Party members in. That's why they don't want you to get any who are the other ones? The PSL people in. That's why, and the independents that get in there end up caucusing with one of the two parties instead of holding a red line to maintain the status quo. So he'll be able to point back at this and say, look at me, I fought back against Donald Trump come midterms and come 2028. But don't forget, like I said before, you did not see this from him when Biden kicked people off Medicaid. That's how you know they're not really trying to challenge power. Then he said this crazy mess.
I got so many stories, I feel like I'm in a hip hop studio right now. I got so many stories, I feel like I'm in a hip hop studio right now.
Congress is high school. I feel like a lot of times, like we're sitting in an audience, like they're on stage. You know the saying, the world's a stage. I feel like that's what it is. Like we're the audience and they're just performing. And I say it because of this. What did I tell you when this bill was first mentioned? That if they really wanted to block this bill, that Senate Democrats and Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries, they know about this. Chuck Schumer could have blocked Donald Trump's bill in the Senate. We went through the whole article on the show. I'll be sure to link it when I do the clip. The whole article on the show that explained step by step how they could have blocked that bill in the Senate. It also said in that article that Chuck Schumer knew about it, but did not respond. That's how you know they're not really trying to challenge power. People at risk of losing their health care, all to play this partisan politics. And then I don't know why, but for some reason, I don't know who comes up with this stuff, man. Hakeem Jeffries thought this was a good idea. Let me get a picture of myself holding the baseball bat. Do you guys get what I mean when I say this is theater? This is not real life. This is a joke. It's theater. I don't know who is the Democrat strategist that thought this was a great idea. Who's coming up with this stuff, man? Where are they getting this mess from? This is why people laugh at the Democratic Party. And I've said this before. The Democratic Party can be so much better than it is. It chooses not to be. The Democratic Party can be free of corporate money. It can be a working class party. It can be a party, again, that stands for the everyday person, the way it used to be before PACs and super PACs and big money interests came in. The Democratic Party went the way of Wall Street, Goldman Sachs, military industrial complex, and never looked back. Theater, while people about to lose their health insurance. You talk about challenging power? How are you challenging power if you taking this much money from AIPAC? And hell, it's not even like he taking like 2,000. This mofo has taken over $1.7 million from AIPAC. You can't ignore that. He's not challenging power. He's establishing a political career. This was actually Track AIPAC's response to this tweet here. The DCCC said, Hakeem Jeffries is the leader America deserves. Remember they did this when Cory Booker had his filibuster? Remember that? Yeah, so Track AIPAC responded and said, no. You guys remember this Bugs Bunny? Yeah. So that's how I say, are they challenging power? That's what you need to ask yourself. But he's not alone, because I want to show you something else, okay? Maxine Waters also decided to get up there, and she's going to do a performance as well. And we're going to show you the real Maxine Waters after this. Watch this.
This big, ugly bill straps health care from 17 million Americans, shutters hospitals, and will starve 12 million people by taking away their food stamps. These cuts add up to $1.3 trillion, the exact cost of the tax cut Republicans are handing out to the richest 1% of Americans. But that's not all. The entire bill will add a whooping $3.3 trillion to our nation's $35 trillion debt. So much for Republicans being the party of fiscal responsibility. They're also gutting the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, an agency that returned $21 billion to families cheated by mega banks. They're cutting housing funds during an affordability crisis and weakening oversight of Wall Street. Maybe they're forgotten that the people elected them, not Trump, or the billionaire class. And Mr. Speaker and members, it'll be a cold day in hell before we let Republicans get away with this. I yield back.
And scene. She won't tell you, of course, she supports billionaires. She supports corporate money. She takes corporate money. She won't tell you that. But I want to compare that to what she said to her own constituents a couple years ago. People forget about this, when she told the homeless people in her own district to go home. This is the real Maxine. This is why I say what you saw on that House floor was theater. Watch this.
Another location where they're taking F's. Is there any more locations than this one? No, it might have been just so many people out here.
1 minute. I want everybody to go home. And I want
we don't got no home. Okay. That's why we here. Miss Miss Waters, come home, we gonna go too.
Yeah. Just a moment.
Just a moment.
Nothing is going to happen here today. Nothing is going to happen anymore today.
You see, that's the real Maxine. That was her telling her own constituents that they needed to go home, but they didn't have a home. They showed up there to get housing. That's why they were there. They were supposed to get those vouchers. That's why they were there. And she said, nothing's going to happen for you today. Some of us didn't forget.
But what we're gonna, well, that's what give me. That's why I'm here. And so I will be downtown with Lassa. I will get the housing authority. That's why they came out here today. I made them come out here. And I'm gonna go.
And you need to know why they're failing, because Blanca Jimenez repeated, we gave her several meeting requests for you concerning this in Lassa for years. And now they're sitting
there's
here.
Nobody in Washington who works for their people in a harder than I do.
I believe you.
I don't want to hear that.
I believe you. So can we finish though? Work with me.
No.
Work with me so we can house people. That's what I'm doing.
I do every day.
What you do every day? I'm still on the damn street.
The money that you got in Washington, D.C. I will continue to work. I will continue to no more
No more vouchers today. That's the real Maxine. You see the theater? That was under Biden's presidency. You see what I'm saying? Now, she said all that stuff in that speech about Wall Street and housing and all that jazz. But look at what she said to her own constituents. No vouchers for you today. Go home, homeless people. Nevertheless, that vote did happen in the House and that bill did pass. And I want you guys to see this here. Like I said, only 2 Republicans voted no, and that was Thomas Massey and Fitzpatrick. And you can see the rest here.
On this vote, the yeas are 218, the nays are 214. The motion is adopted.
They're chanting USA after kicking people off their health care.
Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table.
That bill is going to make its way to Donald Trump's desk, and he will sign it. To make things worse, J.D. Vance, who sometimes I have difficulty believing J.D. Vance went to Yale because he just says the most stupidest things on social media. J.D. Vance brings it up here. I'm going to let you hear it from Blakely, who was just here recently. J.D. Vance admits that lawmakers switched their votes on the big, beautiful bill, kicking millions of their own voters off healthcare to own the libs. You guys see this? They think we're a joke. This is not a game. Let's go in here.
So all the right-wing influencers are celebrating on Twitter that they passed the big, beautiful bill. And of course they're celebrating. They're all super rich and they're all going to make a ton of money off of this massive wealth transfer. I also like that they admit that they will give up their own voters' healthcare to own the libs. J.D. Vance, that loser fucking troll, that actual creation of Peter Thiel and Silicon Valley, which that's why he was put there. That's why he was created and put in the position to be vice president. But some of you haven't learned that yet. Some of you think you fell for the cosplay to be like, just because somebody acts like they're working class means that they are. It's like, no, bro, you need to learn that this is all fake. It's all cosplay. He is George W. Bush and Dick Cheney just rebranded. He literally tweeted, oh, I had some GOP Congress members that were on the fence until they saw Hakeem Jeffries' annoying speech and then they voted yes. First of all, you're totally making that up. This bill was always going to pass. Anybody who's like, oh, he was on the fence, he was like not sure. No, it was always going to pass. Why? Because the people that actually own this country, the real owners, as George Carlin said, of this country, were going to make sure it was going to pass. Because again, what this bill actually is a massive, massive wealth transfer to the top 1%. At the expense of children on SNAP, old folks in nursing homes, poor people on Medicaid. So what J.D. Vance is literally saying is we're kicking people that voted for us, our own people, off of healthcare to own the libs.
There it is, ladies and gentlemen. And just more money to the rich as usual. So I don't care that J.D. Vance came from a working class background and he was poor at one point. And yeah, that motherfucker ain't poor now. I told you guys this before. I'm tired of hearing people's I used to be poor story. Blakely's right. That's why he's there. That's why these things are happening. So all of that was theater. And I think Thomas Massey really did try, like, let me get those votes or whatever. But the speeches and all this stuff and the Senate, like, let's revise the bill and send it back to the House. That's all theater. I just hope more people wake up to see it. Let's go to some of the comments here in the chat. Thank you, Gamble. Everyone remembers Starship Troopers. Privilege and citizenship came with serving the state, not by birthright. Civilians got nada. I remember that. EMK said these MFers are like the popular crowd kids that think their shit don't stink. Yeah, there you go. Soto, it also made him and the Democrats look bad. It looks like they can't accomplish anything. Thank you, Naya. We not gonna say that on here, Maya. Naya. But I get you. I get you, but we can't say that on here. I appreciate the super chat. Thank you, John. These guys can campaign but can't govern. Thanks, Dwayne. Hakeem Jeffries is a fraud. Thank you, Marion. Working, declare your independence and demand equal rights for the same benefits Israel gets, or cut aid and let them pay their own way. I can rock with that. All right, Eric, can we go to part 2 for type B and C? Skylar says Maxine Waters still sends out mailers with the photo of her from the 90s. I'm like, ma'am, stop catfishing. Thank you, Gamble. No challenge of power is to run its interference. Thank you, Jay. I've always said Congress has the biggest corporate boardroom in America. There you go. And thank you, Judah's Corner. The big F up bill cuts Medicare and public assistance under the premise that people can work while robotics and AI are being created for our jobs. Bingo. Judah knows what's up. All right, let's get the, I think, comment on Rockfin. Yeah. Ow, I hit my elbow. That hurt. Thank you, Roger, for the tip on Rockfin. I did not know that it doesn't go into effect until the presidential election year. That won't benefit Dems in the midterm. AI surveillance chopped down to 5 years from 10 before. State can regulate. The more Fed does this, the more they push us at getting it done in the states. Start running CBIAs. 4, 1, abolish all political parties at every level of government. 2, public bank. 3, single payer. And 4, repeal of anti-BDS laws. And thank you for this one. Gutting of the CFPB. New York State has DFS, Department of Financial Services, a state version of CFPB. Run that as a citizen initiative amendment. How about someday we get a national citizen ballot initiative amendment where nationally we can run our amendments to appear on a national ballot for us to ratify into U.S. Constitution? I'd run one saying these fiscal budget spending bills will require Congress to place what they passed on national ballot for voters to sign off on before sending it to the president's desk. Plus, the president can't make minor changes. I think these are interesting ideas. I also say this too. I don't think it's fair that we just don't get a say so. You know, it's just like, this is what I don't like about representatives. Like, they're supposed to represent us, but they don't. Like, they just pass laws and we don't have a say so on whether or not we want these laws in our country. Something to think about. All right, ladies and gentlemen, smash the like button if you haven't had a chance to do so. Thank you. And we are about to move on to our next story after this announcement. Quick announcement, ladies and gentlemen, for those who do not know, I am filming a documentary called Remove. We are figuring out the second line for that. We are talking about gentrification of Boston, how Boston physically removed Black people from Boston. So it's an interesting documentary so far. I think you're going to like what we have so far anyway, but I can't wait to show you guys something, to show you the trailer. But if you can help us, that would be great. It says here, I'm making a documentary titled Removed about gentrification in Boston. Eric and Corey have gathered great footage so far. We are now working with a professional editor and he's doing a great job, but we need help with funds. If you can help, please donate. So the goal is 10,000. We've reached 5,522. And this is to pay the editor. We do have a professional editor. And my goal also is to get this on Tubi. That's my goal. I have to work out some things with licensing, which will be a pain in the ass, but I am going to have it on YouTube first. And then I want to make the way to get it on Tubi. So if you can help, guys, I would really appreciate that. So, and then once that trailer is done, I will share the trailer on social media. So I'll put the link there, and that is for Spot Fund. Thank you. Thank you so much. It should be interesting because, like I said, a lot of people just don't know. A lot of people don't know. Like, they come to Boston and they're like, where are all the Black people? And like, they don't know like what the city has done and what the city is still doing today. So that's what we're covering. Okie dokie. We're going to move on to the next story here, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. What's up? What's up, Boston fam? AC Shakura says, salute from Boston, Massachusetts. What's up? All right, we got a Bostonian. Hey. All right. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this next story is really interesting. You may not know about this, and so I do want to share this story because I feel like it's not getting enough attention. There is a young gentleman in Georgia who is an inventor. And he's been working on this, changing plastic into fuel. In other words, he calls it plastiline. So instead of you having to purchase gasoline, you would get plastiline. And he's been working on this for quite a bit. He got a lot of attention last year. And now this young man is under attack. Somebody is watching him, according to him, that people are watching him. I kid you not. And so I think that capitalism, I think that big business would have a big problem with what he is doing, because that would mean a different story here for oil and gas and all of this stuff. But check it out. I want him to show you what he was doing, and then we'll get into the warning that he gave everybody recently.
So I have 3 days to make 5 gallons of my plastiline, gasoline alternative made from plastic waste. Why? Well, because I have a very exciting collaboration coming. We're gonna run a beautiful vintage car off of this fuel. There's a lot of work to do. Let's get started. Wait. Much better. Much safer. Let's make this fuel, baby, from plastic waste.
I'll just mute it here for a second while I talk over it. I wanted you to see how he's doing this. I found this so interesting. Pretty cool, huh? And how many people knew this? How many of you knew that you can make fuel from plastic? Oh, Peter knows. Peter said, I subscribe to this guy. Okay, so he knows them. All right, let me turn the volume back up. Pretty cool, huh? And then we'll just fast forward just a little bit here so you can see the liquid process. This is the part I thought this was really cool. There's the fuel, guys. All right. So you guys can see the gist of it there. And I just found out about this guy about a couple of days ago. I didn't know about him, but I found out about him because he made the video that alarmed people where he said they're watching him, they're following him. And so we'll get to that as well. But I just thought this was so cool. And for the science, for those of us that like to geek out with science, this is like phenomenal, right? So
from plastic waste.
Okay, and we got to pause it there because of the music. Now, I wanted you to see it actually run in a car because I think that is important. So here is that demonstration. He tried this in Chicago. Check this out.
All right.
Good?
Let's crank it up.
Let's get it out of the way.
Alrighty. All right. He calls it plastic. All right, let's make our way to the front, everybody. Back how we were. Oh, yeah, watch out for
that. You want to donate? There's his GoFundMe.
All right, I'll let you know. All right, everybody, make our way back to the front. All right, everybody, make it to the front. Make it to the front. Everybody that's filming.
Hey, this is a live stream. He ran the diesel truck until it ran out of fuel.
And this is a reminder to everybody here, everybody watching. If you want to support my mission to take sunlight and turn sunlight into fuel made from plastic waste, you can go to my GoFundMe here. We're looking to raise $16,000 to get all the solar equipment I need. Huge thank you to Dan. He's a solar engineer that's donating 15 solar panels right here in Chicago to the cause. Huge thank you to Damien. He helped connect me with everybody out here, help me give me a place to stay. Huge thank you to Tony for the truck. Ulysses for his truck. Huge thank you to Shannon for the space. And huge thank you to all of you and all Chicago and Illinois for making it out today. Everybody give yourself.
Yes, sir!
All right, is everybody ready?
Yeah.
And look, I gotta ask. Do you guys think it's gonna run?
Yeah.
All right.
Yes, sir.
All right, Tony, hit it.
Yeah. Give it a minute. It's going. Here it comes. Yeah.
So that was a demonstration of that, right? A demonstration of diesel from recycled plastic powering a vehicle. And imagine if this really took off, right? We got to drop the beat for this, guys. Just imagine if you had this and you didn't have to rely on regular gas. We got to drop the beat before the holiday weekend. Dance with me. Dance with me. Drop the beat in the street. All right. I love this. I love it. I love seeing young people do such great things. I really do. And now I say that because that young man who's been working on this obviously for quite some time apparently is being followed. And we want to go ahead and get to that part here. But many of you were asking about the plastic to gas process here. He explained part of it in this interview. Check this out.
Crude oil. Going back to the energy thing, energy can't be destroyed nor created. So I'm like, well, that's untapped potential energy right there.
And think about how much waste.
Go back, sorry.
So this technology has been around for a while. The technology of turning like matter, organic matter into fuel, been around. It came down to I saw an article in 2020 talking about 3.4 billion masks in the ocean. I mean, those masks, most of them made of plastic, and it just had me thinking, like, that's wild. That much plastic already, the mask just started being used.
Right.
3.4 billion in the coral
From
reefs.
COVID and all that.
They found them in like the Mariana Trench and stuff, so deep, and it's like clearly there's an issue. There's no value to plastic.
Right.
Once it's done being used, we don't care. We want to get rid of it.
Right.
But I knew plastic is made of petroleum, crude oil. Going back to the energy thing, energy can't be destroyed nor created. So I'm like, well, that's untapped potential energy right there.
There you go. That's the answer. Plastic, petroleum. Again, energy can't be, created nor destroyed. Now, he sent out this message. Again, his name is Julian Brown. Listen to what he's saying now. And this was recent. Typical African shared this. African-American man Julian Brown, who made his own fuel station from plastic waste since he was 17 years old, raises awareness that he's being targeted. So guys, listen up.
I know that I'm not going to live long. And that's why I put every day, every hour, every minute into building, into growing. Why am I out here working on this plastic in the fuel reactor I've been working on for 5 years, since I was 17? Why am I out here in 100-degree weather? Why am I out here despite being falsely accused and reported to the EPA and the IRS? Why am I out here despite weird black helicopters that turn off their radar transponder circling me 6 times at night? Why am I out here?
Everybody hear that part? So he's been reported to the EPA, and there's a black helicopter that's circling around. You see, the billionaire class, they don't want something like this to happen. You know why? And remember, I told you guys this before, that I really do believe that if medicine really wanted to have a cure for cancer, they would have it. I told you this, right? Right. Because like I said before, I just don't believe that all these years they've been doing all this research and they're like, no, we don't have no cure. But other countries have implemented other means to take care of that. So think about that for a second. We're talking about an industry that makes a lot of freaking money. We're talking about oil. We're talking about the gas. Like, that's an industry that makes a lot of money. Big part of the reason why the U.S. wants to have an Israel in the Middle East, as Biden put it, is to protect those types of resources, right? The oil. There's a lot of oil that's around Iran, right? This is why they say, oh, Iran's our enemy. Right? Because they want that oil. You're talking about a complete game changer in the world, not just in the United States. If this became like huge and everyone's like, oh, well, we could just take plastic, recycle plastic and use that for fuel, what does that do to the oil industry? That means some of these big oil kings might lose some of their money, and they don't like that. And you guys know that there are some people right here in the United States that made a lot of money off of oil and still make a lot of money off of oil. They don't want to lose that at all. So they look at someone like Julian and they say, hold up, now you might be messing with our money. And this is why I always say, if you follow the money, you'll see where the problem is really coming from. The billionaire class is a problem. So this is one thing I agree with Zohran on when he said billionaires got to go. They do got to go. You become a billionaire by exploiting other people. Now you got this gentleman out here working his ass off to try to do something useful with plastic and use it to create fuel to power people's cars. Do you realize what a game changer this could be in the world? But the big oil kings don't like that. And I think that's why he's now being watched. And I think we know where those helicopters probably came from.
Why am I out here despite weird black helicopters that turn off their radar transponder circling me 6 times at night? Why am I out here sleeping in my van, crazy humidity, mosquitoes, gnats flying in, and yet I still do it? Why am I out here despite having to drive 4 hours every time I want to work on this machine? Because when I was doing it in my parents' backyard, I blew myself up. and I had to go to the hospital for second-degree burn surgery. I do this because this is my mission that I've assigned myself to. I do this because I do not fear death. I do not fear suffering or uncomfortability. You know what I fear? I fear allowing an idea of something that may not even exist or happen have enough control over your entire life to where you're not even really living your life.
You guys, he knows. Dwayne says he is not simply being watched, he's being targeted. Guys, he knows that by him doing this, this could cause him his life, like cost his life. And he's letting everybody know he doesn't fear it. He doesn't fear like death at all. Because he knows that people they're targeting him. I would say the same thing if somebody, if a scientist and a doctor all of a sudden one day said, hey, I got the cure for cancer. I think they'd come after them too, because like I said before, as long as there is illness, there is treatment, and there's a lot of money to be made off of treatment instead of having an actual cure that would get rid of this illness. Always goes back to the money.
That's the only thing I fear. And thus, I am completely set on what I want to do here, and nothing will steer my course but myself. And I am not a quitter. And now that I've set my mind on this, because I wish to liberate humanity, I wish to liberate humanity from this cycle in which we're bound by waste, in this cycle in which we're bound by division, in this cycle in which we're bound by not knowing ourselves. I wish to free us all from all of this. And now that I'm set on that mission, I'm not giving up. And so it will happen, no matter what. Because you know what? To me, when I'm building something, I expect it to be hard. I expect it to be uncomfortable. I expect it to be difficult. You know why? Because that's the whole point. You have to suffer to grow. You have to feel uncomfortable to attribute value to what you do. So you may see this and you see a piece of metal with certain pieces of metal welded onto it, but I see it for what it really is. I see it because when I see this, I can go back in time to not just putting it together, but the motivation as to why I put it together, the hope, the purpose, the passion, all right here embodied. My soul is within this, just as yours is within anything you do and put your mind to as well. So if you wonder why I'm out here and why I'm not going to do anything else but continue to stay on this mission until I see it through, until I say it's complete, that is why. Because it doesn't matter what anything externally is. There is no threat. There is no uncomfortability. There is no amount of suffering that will steer me from what I wish to do, because that is the life I wish to live. It's inevitable.
I will put the link in the chat. I know some of you were asking for the link to this, so I'll go ahead and put the link in the chat for that video. Again, his name is Julian, and you know, we gotta cover these stories. Julian Brown. Let me go ahead and share it here. I hope that works out okay. There we go. There's the link there. I hope you guys can access it. Okay. You know, one thing about this show, I try my best to cover some things that I know are not going to be covered elsewhere. And this is one of those stories, because I think that, you know, oftentimes we talk about the problem, but we don't get to the solution. You know, what he's doing could be a possible solution, could rid us of these oil spills, oil crisis, etc., just dealing with oil in general. And I think that when we talk about challenging power, what he is doing is actually challenging power. He's providing an alternative, and the billionaire class don't like that. And so you see the difference between what he's doing and the politicians who perform for you. So this is an example. That's a different way of challenging power. And notice he don't answer to nobody. He not working for nobody under this is all him. And they don't like that. So I put that link there. Please make sure you share that with people, and we'll clip the stories for the stream, and you'll have this over the weekend that you can share the video clip with people as well. Again, his name is Julian Brown, and he is being targeted. Let's go to some of the comments here, ladies and gentlemen, and then we'll get to this Diddy story. Thank you, Marlon. Who is Marion? If the people, did I say Marion? I'm sorry. If the people don't come together after this, they never will. The duopoly will always play ping pong with American emotions. There you go. I just think the way we frame things needs to be different. Like, and that's something I've been working on this year. Like, I'm not asking, is so-and-so challenging said politician? I'm asking, is so-and-so challenging power? Right? Andre said probably the oil industry. Clever. They're coming after him means he's doing something good. Yeah, you go. Thank you. Alicia says his channel is Nature Jab. Thank you. Thank you, Marlon. Pray for him. Farina says, I wonder how much energy it requires to produce it. It's a good question. Dwayne says, and we know who is following him. Yes, we do. Thank you, 80RM. I've known about the young man for about a month. The plastic goes through a process called pyrolysis. Thank you, DJ. Look up Stanley Allen Mayer, inventor of the water power fuel cell in the 80s, died under mysterious circumstances. I bet he did. I'll look that up. What is this BC case at Sabby? You might be right about Mamdani. I think he's hiding his wealth and acting like he's working class. He owns land in Africa and went to a 93,000-year college, and his mom is Hollywood insider. Yeah, I think he did talk about that, though. I think he did talk about it. You know, hey, to me, there are class traders, you know, but I think he did talk about that, to be fair. We put the link in the chat. Thank you. Notori said, this reminded me of the two men back in the day, ran cars not using oil, but water, and that was shot down. Biography. Okay. Yeah. Need to look into that. Shout out to Nia, who just became a new member. Thank you, Nia. All right. We're getting to the final story here, ladies and gentlemen. If you haven't done so, smash the like. Thank you. Diddy, 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 Diddy. I thought I told you that we won't stop. Thought I told you that we won't stop. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, Sean Diddy Combs apparently has been found not guilty on the most serious charges of this case. And that right there lets you know that he's probably not going to do a lot of time. Now, what he is being charged with right now, I believe this is referred to as the Mann Act. We'll get into that a little bit more with detail. But Sean Diddy Combs has been found not guilty on the more serious charges of that trial, which is racketeering and sex trafficking. Let's go ahead and get into it. A lot of people are split on this. Some people are saying free Diddy. Some people are saying put that mofo in jail. Let's get into it.
Forgive me. We have the first verdict on count one, racketeering conspiracy. How do you find the defendant not guilty? And so now they'll move on to count two. Count two, how do you find the defendant not guilty? That is the sex trafficking of Cassandra Ventura. On count three, which is Mann Act transportation involving Cassie Ventura, guilty. Count four, sex trafficking of Jane, not guilty. Count five, Mann Act transportation of Jane, guilty.
So long story short, he was found guilty for prostitution, not found guilty for trafficking, not found guilty for racketeering. And those were the more serious charges of that case, which means maybe Suge Knight was right. When Suge Knight called in the News Nation, he said that Diddy was going to walk. No. Let's go on a little bit more here.
So, mixed verdict here. Not guilty on 3 of the charges, guilty on 2 of the charges. Lisa, your reaction?
Well, this might explain the sort of confusion that we had yesterday. And I want to go back to what a racketeering conspiracy is about and why, having found 2 instances of transportation with an intent to commit prostitution, this is a jury that still didn't find Sean Combs guilty of a racketeering conspiracy because, as you and I were just discussing, 2 acts of transportation for purposes of prostitution would qualify as the 2 predicate racketeering acts. But of course, a RICO charge requires 2 other things. It requires that the jury find an existence of a conspiracy, and it requires also that they find that there is an enterprise formed for the purposes of carrying out unlawful acts. And that may be where the hangup is, because the charges of transporting both Cassie Ventura and Jane Doe for purposes of prostitution, they were against Sean Combs alone. They were not framed as conspiracy charges. The jurors here saying they find Sean Combs guilty of it, but they may not have bought the fact that, for example, to the extent that people in his business life, people who were employees of Combs Enterprises, which even the prostitution concedes is also a legitimate business, they may not have accepted that Sean Combs was simultaneously running a criminal enterprise largely fueled by people who were legitimate employees of his other businesses, including his chief of staff, his heads of security, multiple personal assistants. According to the prosecution's theory of the case and testimony that they obtained, all of those people were intimately involved in facilitating Sean Combs's 2 decades long pattern of sex trafficking and abuse of these women. Again, based on this verdict, you may have a jury that just didn't buy that part. They may have thought Sean Combs did this alone, but he wasn't responsible for sex trafficking his ex-girlfriends. At worst, he transported them different places, both within the United States and outside the United States.
And we'll pause here for just a second. And this was the feeling I was getting a couple of days ago when they announced that the jury was split, that there were, people that were inside the courtroom said some of the jury members were, I guess, like rolling their eyes, or they just were like, okay, whatever, that they weren't really buying some of these statements. And I think one of the things that hurts the sex trafficking charge for Cassie and alike, when there was the moment during Cassie's testimony when she said that she was the one that brought the people in, that he instructed her to bring them across state lines. Remember back then when we covered Cassie's testimony, I told you, well, technically, that means that Cassie did the sex trafficking, right? Technically, she brought them across state lines. But what her team was trying to argue was that this is something she was forced to do, not something she wanted to do. There was testimony throughout this trial where Dawn Richards, for example, at one point she was on the stand and she was asked, like, if she left because it was so difficult working with Diddy. And she's like, well, no, I stayed there, because she was still reaping the benefits at that point in time, right? So it's like some of the testimony, I think, helped Diddy instead of hurting Diddy. Does that make any sense? I hope I'm making sense to people. Some of the things that were brought to trial didn't really have much to do with the case. Like, for example, for all the people who were talking about, well, Kid Cudi was there and Diddy tried to blow up Kid Cudi's car, I don't see what that had to do with the charges. You see what I mean? Like, I know that he knew Cassie, but that had nothing to do with the charges. Another thing that people continued to bring up was the video where Diddy was beating Cassie. I continued to remind people even back then, that was not one of the charges. There was no charge of assault or domestic abuse. So that's why that couldn't even get charged. And you're going to hear from a lawyer who is going to explain why they think that, keep playing the tape of him beating Cassie or whatever actually made things worse for Cassie. And then at the end of all of this, I think you need to ask yourself, who really won here? Because, I know people are still waiting to hear the sentence for the prostitution charges. But at the end of the day, the only one who really, Cassie won money, but the most he can get right now for the Mann Act is 10 years. That's the maximum he can get. I doubt they're going to give him 10 years for prostitution. I just seriously doubt it. This isn't just like some everyday Joe Schmo. Like Diddy he's rich, he's famous. And don't forget, Diddy knows a lot of powerful people. We can always go back to that article, which I'll show you at the end, that Whitney Webb wrote about One Nation, One Label Under Blackmail, where she made the connection between Diddy, Clive Davis, and Russell Simmons, all the way to Jeffrey Epstein. So you got to remember, Diddy knows a lot of powerful people. Also, I think this, I believe that if Diddy is sentenced, I would not be surprised if Donald Trump pardons Diddy. And there's another reason for this as well. Don't forget, they're pretty cool with each other back in the day, may not agreed with him politically, but Donald Trump went to some of these parties too. You see what I'm saying? Diddy partied with high profile people. So don't be surprised. Let's continue.
For the purposes of engaging in commercial sex acts with escorts whom he procured, or that the girlfriends or other people in his life procured for him, that was part and parcel, Anna, of the sort of freak-off pattern that prosecutors laid forth before this jury.
And so I want to bring in former Manhattan District Attorney Catherine Christian now. So we have 3 not guilty verdicts on the most serious crimes, the racketeering conspiracy, the sex trafficking crimes involving Cassie Ventura, as well as the woman who went by Jane, but guilty on 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution. What's your reaction to this verdict? What do you make of it?
Well, the defense is breathing a sigh of relief. Yes, there are 2 guilty counts on the Mann Act charges, but as Christy said earlier, he's no longer facing a mandatory minimum. He's been acquitted on the highest counts, the RICO counts, the sex trafficking counts. What I think the juries are allowed to speak publicly about their verdict, but what happens here when you have sex trafficking for Miss Ventura and then the sex trafficking for Jane Doe, the jury clearly did not believe that the government proved beyond a reasonable doubt that these 2 women were sex trafficked by force or by fraud or coercion. For Ms. Ventura, it's a very hard lift to explain to a jury why someone would stay for years who was a victim of intimate partner violence. Clearly, they've decided that she was not a victim of sex trafficking. The text messages where she indicated that she wanted to, engage in it, they may just have not believed that she wasn't a willing participant.
That part right there is, I think, what divided the jury in some way as well. Because if you look at the text messages and they're like, well, she had these text messages, so it seems like she was willing to participate in those acts, at least at that point in time. Long story short, to what she was just saying, it seems like some of the jury members didn't buy that Cassie was a victim. Now, again, this is where we go back to the videotape that people keep showing, right? Like the beating in the hallway, in the hotel hallway, which Cassie says that was her trying to leave. That was one of the times when she was trying to leave what was about to be a freak off, and she was trying to get out of there. Again, that wasn't one of the charges. So I think it would have been different if there was a charge of a domestic abuse or, assault, assault and battery, but that wasn't one of them. And so it almost feels like, to me, by showing that video, however many times it was shown, that actually might have helped Diddy more than it did Cassie, because people are like, okay, but that's not one of the charges. Like, what are we looking at here? Now, don't get me wrong, like, and we covered this when it happened. What was on that video was horrible, absolutely horrible. And there's no way that was a first time. There's no way that incident of him kicking her like that, nah, that wasn't the first time. But that wasn't the charge. And this is what I think, like, some people get confused by. They're like, well, we saw him do this. That wasn't one of the charges. There's a lawyer here that comes in. I was actually on RT with him one time, Lionel. Listen to what he says here, because he did try to warn people that this wasn't going to work the way people thought it would.
And that video of Cassie, I kept saying, you keep showing that, you're going to habituate this. It doesn't, you don't understand. What does this have to do with racketeering? Nothing. She made $30 million. She sued the hotel, I believe, got 20 from him. Plus they remain friends. Plus, she has texts where she says, I like these freak offs. Plus, these people could have left. They could have called the police. They could have done anything. They didn't. But they want you to believe that somehow she was a victim of this. Now, the argument could be made that when you were involved in something as complicated as this, when you are involved in this grief bonding and all this other kind of bonding and victim bonding, you can come up with any name you want for this. Go ahead. And there may be something to that. Probably is. Some psychological connection that pulls people together, that where people by virtue, remember that case, I forget what it was, these women who were kept hostage by this man, and sometimes the women didn't leave, they didn't escape. When you find yourself in a position of being held captive, kidnapped, mentally, actually, constructively, you'd be surprised what people do. They just give up. It's called learned helplessness. So I think there's something to be said for that. But there's no statute against that. That may be true in the real world, but there's no statute.
I will just say that another thing I wanted to add is that I don't think those text messages helped Cassie. I think that worked against her. I think I'll be honest with you as well. I don't think Dawn's testimony from Danity Kane, I don't think that helped either. It just, I don't know, but I do know this. I know that, like I said, Diddy has a lot of money and knows very powerful people. And so people do need to keep this in mind. Like, if Diddy goes down, there's a bunch of other people that could go down as well. Powerful people that could go down as well. This kind of takes me back to the Epstein situation, right? Epstein's arrested. He's put in jail. All of a sudden, he's dead because he could take a lot of powerful people down with him. So keep that in mind. Diddy wasn't just hanging out with other artists and producers. Diddy surrounded himself around powerful people. So you have to keep that in mind. Now, these other charges that he was found guilty for, this goes into the Mann Act, right? So let's talk a little bit about the Mann Act so that people understand what this is all about. What is the Mann Act? Why is it called the Mann Act? In 1910, Congress passed the bill, which was named after Republican U.S. Representative James Robert Mann of Illinois. It was also known as the White Slave Traffic Act of 1910. Let's continue on. How does it apply to the Combs case? Combs was convicted on counts involving two former girlfriends, Cassie and a woman who testified under the pseudonym Jane. Both women said at the trial that Combs had pressured them into degrading sex marathons with strangers who were paid for the sexual performances. Jane said she was once beaten by Combs for declining to participate. Cassie said that when she tried to walk out of one of the events, Combs beat her and dragged her down the hotel hallway. That is the video that we keep referring to, that video that we all saw. Combs was acquitted for sex trafficking and racketeering charges, but convicted for transporting people to engage in prostitution. In other words, it almost kind of, in so many ways, it almost kind of seemed like Diddy was a pimp. That's what it almost kind of feel like. Now, it goes on to say here a little bit of the history about this Mann Act. The law was originally prohibited this interstate or foreign commerce transport of any woman or girl for the purpose of prostitution or debauchery, or for any other immoral purpose. It followed a 1907 congressionally appointed commission to look into the issue of immigrant sex workers with the view that a girl would only enter prostitution if drugged or held captive. That's according to Cornell's Legal Information Institute. The law was used to secure a conviction against Jack Johnson, who became the first Black boxer to win a world heavyweight title in 1910. Johnson was convicted in 1913 by an all-white jury for traveling with his white girlfriend who worked as a sex worker in violation of the Mann Act. So does everybody see where this is applying here? That's him right there. That was Boxer Jack Johnson right there. Now, this law has changed a little bit since 1910. So let's go to the more current version. Here, we'll start with 1986. In 1986, it was updated, made the law gender neutral, and effectively ended the act's role in trying to legislate morality by changing debauchery and immoral purpose to any sexual activity for which any person can be charged with a criminal offense. The act received additional amendments in 1978 and 1994 to address issues of sexual exploitation of children. Nevertheless, Combs' legal team made a motion last February to dismiss a Mann Act charge, writing that the law has a long and troubling history as a statute with racist origins. Prosecutors said there was nothing racist about pursuing charges under the act. Most of Combs' accusers are people of color. So, this is basically what could happen now. For this particular act, he could receive up to a maximum of 10 years. Again, I don't think that's going to happen. I really don't think he's going to get 10 years. What I have questions about is everyone keeps mentioning Cassie, etc. What happened to the victims that said they were assaulted by Diddy when they were underage? What happened to that? What happened to the lawyer that said he had the names of like 100-something people, and some of them said that at the time that they were assaulted, they were underage? What happened to those people? Anybody? Bueller? Anybody know? Because I feel like we heard about that and then we didn't hear anything else about it. So I don't know. I'm a little bit confused because this isn't, at the time, this wasn't just about Cassie. According to the lawyer, there were other people who came forward. So what happened to all those people? Okay. So I don't know. Maybe they got scared. This woman says this. I want to show you some of the public reaction. She said he beat a woman on camera, stomped her head in, and this is y'all's verdict. Again, like I told you, it's disgusting, like what he did, but that wasn't the charge. See what I mean? We're going to look at some of the other reactions here. Boozy, let's hear what Boozy said.
Man, I'm so glad Diddy free, bro. You know, the reason is because I'm tired of seeing us black moguls get took down like that, bro. And I'm tired of seeing us black people go against us black moguls like that. And I feel like if Diddy was a white man who done all this shit for people, you know, I know he ain't paid people, but if he done all this shit for hip hop, if he was white, they would have had so many white people out there protesting for this man losing his life behind a relationship, you know. And
that didn't happen with Harvey Weinstein, and that definitely didn't happen with Jeffrey Epstein, though.
and people always Boosie was on Diddy's side. Nah, it ain't that. It's because I'm thinking about 7 children. Y'all thinking about one person. I'm thinking about these 7 kids who been in my kid's position. Not knowing if your daddy gonna come home or not is a burden on the child. So all y'all was like, no, I'm thinking about them damn children, man.
Maybe I need to look at the age numbers again, but his kids are pretty grown. Like, I think there may be maybe one of his kids might be. I thought his kids were all over the age of 18 at this point. Maybe I'm mistaken. Maybe he had other kids, but I'm still thinking about the people who, again, I'm going back to the people who said that they were assaulted at Diddy parties as minors, since he mentioned kids. Again, what happened to those people? People need to ask this question.
So man, I'm glad he free, bro. You know, like I've been said, I don't feel he was guilty of nothing, you know, nothing but domestic violence, you know. But the court spoke, man, and man, I'm happy that dude children, man. I know his feeling right now, right? I'm just happy for them children, man. So, you know, Diddy, sit your ass down somewhere. That's what you need to do. Grab Stevie J in your turn and get the fuck on.
Yeah, I don't know if Boosie like maybe had a little bubbly before this or not, but he is happy that this has happened for Diddy. Thank you so much for letting me know. Someone just told me Tread said the twins and the other girl I think is 16 or 17. Okay, thank you. Wasn't aware of that. But the public reception to this, like I said, it's been mixed. I see some people saying free Diddy, some people saying no, lock that mofo up, etc. But what was also really weirdly interesting, there were Diddy, I guess, sycophants outside of the courthouse that decided that they wanted to put baby oil on themselves. Huh? Like dead serious. CNN host mentioned it
proper
here.
and etiquette that is happening inside of a courtroom. No, instead, I kid you not, people are pouring baby oil on one another outside this courthouse. Baby oil having a very big play in the freak-offs we heard about. You had people saying it's not Rico, it's Frico. You got applause coming when the mother of Sean Diddy Combs, Miss Janice, got out of the vehicle just a few moments ago, really, behind us and walked inside to elated cheers and her greeting the crowd. Every time the family, the children, the 6 adult children come in, 3 boys and 3 girls, they are met by cheers, and also at times throughout the course of trial, met by scathing and disrespectful comments as well, a lot of profanity.
Let's get to the baby oil because there are people outside, and this is the part to me that's just, this is ridiculous. Like, why does the do you need to do this? Does this need to happen?
I don't know what she's gonna do, y'all.
Why? Why? People, why? I don't understand. Why does this happen? Why is this happening? Like, I'm not getting all my questions answered. Like, what about, people that said that they were drugged? What about people that said that, oh, well, they were putting drugs in the baby oil, and what happened to all that? I mean, did these things happen? Yes or no? Because apparently, like, the jury seems to be apparently split on this. But I mean, like, so are we supposed to believe that all of this is made up? I don't believe all of it is made up. That's what I'm saying. And so if that's the case, and Diddy, let's say he does walk, or let's say he just gets probation, right? What does that mean for everybody who testified against him? What does that mean for everybody else? And either way, I kind of look at it as though, dude, your reputation is probably fucked right now, even if you do walk, because now people know something that you really didn't want them to know. Because now people know about these freak offs or whatever, and that's his own, their personal thing or whatever. But now it's like, it's one of those things. It's like, once you see it, you can't unsee it. It's like the whole Pee Wee Herman thing, like I still, the actor that played Pee Wee Herman, and it's kind of hard to look at him like the same once you found out what he did in the movie theater, like, I don't know. I remember when Pee Wee Herman got arrested, like that type of thing. So I just don't know. Does life go back to normal for Diddy after this? I don't think it does. I don't think it goes back to normal for Cassie or Dawn or the rest of them either. And here's something else that's interesting. People are asking, well, how was Diddy able to do this for as long as he did? Well, he's rich. He knows a lot of powerful people. But according to his bodyguard, there was also this.
Do you think Diddy was an FBI informant? You think the feds had him?
I think that they knew about him a long time ago, and there's certain situations that came out, like this guy, paperwork, found some information where Puff was seeing a federal agent in D.C. And it popped up. He had an appointment with a federal agent in D.C.
What year?
And I think 91. Somewhere when he was
That early?
That early. I don't know why or what was the situation. It came out.
Wow. Diddy seen with a federal agent in 91? That's way before he becomes somebody.
Yeah, but you got to realize he was doing a lot of parties. He was doing some lot of things in D.C. And
he was also a hype man. Like, people forget this, but like before there was Bad Boy Records, remember Diddy was like an A&R rep. He was a hype man for a guy. I don't think he's around anymore. There was a musician named Father MC, and Diddy was the hype man for him. So he was already in the music business for quite a bit before he started Bad Boy label.
I think it was possibly because there was an incident when some people died.
Got it. Similar to the other one with the 9 kids?
So yeah.
Got it.
Similar to DC.
Let's go back.
And I think it was possibly because there was an incident when some people died.
Got it. Similar to the other one with the 9 kids?
So yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, that was a long pause. It wouldn't surprise me. Sometimes people are able to get away with things like that for as long as they do because they do have some type of connections. And speaking of connections, how about this flashback? Because see, Diddy had political connections too. Did y'all forget?
It's right.
Yeah, this is definitely the start. This is the start of the conversation. AOC, do you have something else to say?
Yeah, no, it's like Angela is saying it all right now because it really calls into question, why it's not just do Black Lives Matter, but why do they matter to you?
I see you on the front line. Let's get it.
See, people forget, right? People forget, like Diddy knew a lot of people. He had political connections. He has music. It's not just music. He was buddies with a lot of people. And another thing I want to mention too, why I think that Donald Trump will probably pardon him is because remember, like I said, Donald Trump was at those parties too. There's videos, there's pictures and stuff of him hanging out with Donald Trump. People forget this too. Donald Trump used to hang out with the rappers. Donald Trump I remember when I was a kid, Donald Trump used to be in music videos. He was in Bobby Brown music video on Our Own. Remember that song? On Our Own, the Ghostbuster video song or whatever. He was in that music video. People used to sing about him. Don't forget, Nelly said, Bill Gates, Donald Trump, let me in. See, people forget about this, but Donald Trump used to hang out with it. Did he know a lot of people? A lot of powerful people. So you see the political connections here. Van Jones, AOC, of course, Angela Rye. Angela Rye had to be on there. She had to be there. And wait for it.
Yes, sir.
Hey, everybody. It's good to be with you this evening. Sean, I want to thank you because you always have a way of convening and bringing folks together.
It's right.
See, people remember, right? You remember now? Yeah. I remember Diddy had this whole this voting campaign back in the day. It was called Vote or Die. You guys remember that? Yeah. See, people forget. He knew people in all these different types of spaces. So I doubt he's going to receive 10 years. I doubt he's going to receive that. I won't be surprised if he gets like probation. I don't. Too many powerful people to take down, man. Too many people. And I just don't think he's going to be able to, they're going to let that happen. Matt Stew said, rock the vote. Yeah, I remember that too. Yep, rock the vote. Right. But this all leads back to, once again, this article from Whitney Webb. Don't forget what Whitney said. It was one label under blackmail, the early intersections of Diddy and the Epstein network. And this is a long ass article, but I'll put the link in the chat so you can read it on your own. We went through it before on the show already. But what you honey buns got to know is that there are powerful people and powerful forces at work. And Whitney made the connection between Diddy, Andre Harrell, Russell Simmons, Levi here. I forget, almost forgot about him. And then later on in the article, Clive Davis. It's a long article, but it is really good. Really, really good. How it's all connected, ladies and gentlemen. So like I said, you're talking about taking down powerful people. Russell Simmons fled the United States and took his ass to Bali because he knew what was coming, okay? All of this is connected. So if Diddy goes down, that means some of these people might go down too. And if they go down, would they talk and would they reveal other names as well? You see what I mean? It's a domino effect. I think that people that just have a lot of money and have a lot of power, they're able to get away with a lot of things. It's crazy, guys. Crazy, crazy, crazy things. Let's get to the comments here. Sella said he's going to do 6 months at best. At best, I agree with you. I just don't think it's going to be what people think it is. Eric said, so they found him guilty on things that shouldn't even be crimes. Thank you, Marlon. They didn't recover all the tapes, just saying. So just saying you don't go that far over a baby oil limit and walk away like nothing happened. Marvin said, you think Diddy gonna get whacked? Did he have an accident? I think Diddy played by the rules during this trial, so he'll probably be fine. Thank you, Roger. Baby Oilers were the ones at the freak-offs. Thank you, Treed. Sabby, I stand corrected. Sorry about that. The 3 daughters are 18, so he only has one that's a minor. Okay, thank you. Christine said a new case was filed today. Sabby, 10 million. It's a male model. And thank you, Roger. Father MC from Far Rock. How do you know Father Sab? Oh, because my dad used to play Father MC. Father MC had a song called Treat Them Like They Want to Be Treated. You should treat them right. Ooh, the irony. Let's go to the comment on Rockfin, and then we're going to head out of here, guys. We'll resume call-in next week because we're going into the holiday weekend. So thank you for the tip, Dave. Thanks for the discussion space, Sabby. Nice stream. You are welcome. Welcome. Okie dokie. And thank you, Matless. Sabby, you need to Google Jay-Z, Desiree Perez, Trump pardon. I will do that, Matless. I will do that. That is it for me, guys. Guys, please enjoy your July 4th weekend. Have fun with your friends and your fam and all that kind of stuff. I will be taking Sunday off because it's holiday weekend, spending time with the fam. I will be back live on Tuesday evening, so I will see you guys then. All righty. Have a good night. Keep up the fight.